Good evening, and welcome to the December 17th, 2024 meeting of the Portsmouth Zoning Board of Adjustment. So the first item on this spring evening, it's very unusual. The first item of business is election of officers. Alternates do not vote.
We don't even have an agenda.
We don't have an agenda?
It's on.
Members don't normally get agendas, but it's on.
He has them. Yes. So the first item of business
Don't all speak at once.
is two officers
The upcoming calendar year.
Are you
for
waiting?
the upcoming calendar
Are
year.
you waiting for nominations?
I am.
Has anybody stepped forward to indicate they wanted the offices?
At the pre-board meeting last Wednesday, I was asked if I would be willing to do it again. And
What was your answer?
it was yes.
Okay. And I nominate Chair Eldridge for the position of chair.
Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. Do you want to do a slate together, or? No? Okay. Is there any discussion? Then all in favor of having me be chair again, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Aye. Thank you. We now need a nomination for vice chair.
Is the vice chair running again?
Is
or-
the vice chair running again?
I would be happy to serve again if that's what people want. So,
I would like to nominate Vice Chair Margison for the position of vice chair.
Is there a second? Okay, thank you. All right. All in favor of Beth Margison to continue as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? No. All right, thank you. Next item of business is approval of the minutes of the November 19th, 2024 meeting. Does anybody have any comments about this, changes?
I do, actually. It's on page 12.
Okay.
11, page 11. The last paragraph, about midway down the paragraph, there's a sentence that starts, he said substantial justice would be done because since there would be no impact on the public and any loss to the applicant would not be outweighed by loss. There should not be an and there. Just take that out.
Okay. Okay. Does everyone get that change? Okay. Anybody else? If not, I would accept a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
So moved.
oh,
Thank you, Mr. Rayum. Second?
second.
Ms. Margison? Okay, any discussion? Okay, then, this is a vote to approve the minutes of November 19th. All in favor?
Aye.
Objections? No. Okay. Before we go on to old business, I want to remind people that the applicants have 15 minutes to present to us. And if you think it's going to be longer, we appreciate you asking for the extra time ahead of time, and we will vote on it. Public has 5 minutes at the mic. I also just want to let you know that 84 Pleasant Street had a request for a rehearing tonight, and they have withdrawn that. So if anybody was here for that. Okay, item A under old business. The request of 361 Hanover Steam Factory LLC owner and Hampshire Development Corporation LLC applicant for property located at 361 Hanover Street, whereas relief is needed to expand and renovate the existing commercial building and convert it to multifamily residential, and to construct 3 new multifamily residential buildings, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.642 to allow residential principal uses on the ground floor of the buildings. 2, variance from section 10.5A41, figure 10.5A41.10D to A, allow for ground floor height of 10.5 feet where 12 feet is required, And 3, variance from Article 15, definition of a penthouse, to allow a penthouse with a setback of 8 feet from all roof edges where 15 to 20 feet is required, and to allow no greater than 80% of the gross living area of the level of the floor below, where 50% is the maximum. Said property is located on Assessor Map 138, Lot 63, and lies within the Character District 5 and CD5 District and the Downtown Overlay District. Before we start, I just want to note that Mr. Rayam has recused himself from this application.
Also, Madam Chair, I think that you forgot the first.
Did I skip?
I think to allow, to allow for apartment, row house.
Thank you,
and
row
duplex
house and
building.
duplex building types where they are not permitted. Thank you.
Sure.
It was
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Ms. Casella. I'm Attorney John Boson. I represent the applicant. With me tonight, our team, Stephen Wilson, and Shane Forsley from Hampshire Development Corporation, and our engineer, John Shaggy from Haley Ward. Our project consultant, Nick Cracknell, is ill this evening, not able to attend. It's possible, Madam Chair, that my presentation may spill over 15 minutes, so I would ask in advance for an additional 5 minutes. I don't think I'll need it, but just in case.
No, okay, that seems, okay.
That's fine.
Do you take a real vote?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to allow extra time on this item?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And if we could go to slide number 2, please. My client owns the property at 361 Hanover Street and intends to redevelop the existing historic building on the site into a multifamily building and convert the existing parking lot into three multifamily buildings for a total unit count of 48. These 48 units will have all the required parking on site, and it will not be visible to the public. And you can see that in slide number 2. If you could go to the next slide, please. Next slide is the existing conditions, and I'll just kind of point that out to you so you can see the size of the lot. And I won't go through the existing conditions in detail. They're all there, but I thought it would be helpful if you saw them just to visualize what the site looks like. This property, as you may know, has a long history of industrial and commercial use. It was built in the 19th century as a 5-story brick and timber structure with a slab basement and a flat roof. In the late 19th century, there was a fire that reduced the building to 2 stories. In the 1950s, the property was used as an automobile dealership. Later in the 70s, it was used as an architectural firm, then a publishing company. And over time, this property became surrounded by residential uses. So there's no doubt that residential uses with no commercial intrusion is the highest and best use of this property. Go to the next slide, please. This property is also subject to some complicated zoning. The property is located in the CD5 Character District, which allows for a variety of high-density uses, commercial and residential uses. These standards allow for 95% building coverage, footprints of up to 20,000 square feet, and just 5% open space. CD5 also allows flat, gable, mansard, gambrel, and hip roofs. Property is also located in the Downtown Overlay District, which requires ground floor commercial uses, and off-street parking is not required. And lastly, the existing building on site lies within the North End Incentive Overlay District, which allows for an additional building story and requires both community space and workforce housing. This project's already been before the planning board for both a conceptual consultation and a design review, which we refer to as our vested as-of-right plan. And if you go to the next slide, that depicts the vested as-of-right plan. This is what my client can build as of right with no zoning relief. I want to stress not only to this board, but to the public who've already made comments on this project, that this is a vested project, which consists of a 3-story building with a mansard 4th floor attic. It's 40 feet high, 95% coverage, 5% open space, and meets all required parking. It also has the necessary first floor commercial uses The total unit count is 36 residential uses, 6 commercial uses, for a total of 42 units. After receiving feedback from city staff, many neighbors, and other leaders in town, nobody was really thrilled about the first floor commercial uses in this section of town. Commercial uses require no parking. It brings third parties into a neighborhood. It has the potential to create noise, traffic, and additional lighting. So we went back to the drawing board and we came up with another plan that we refer to as our CUP plan. And Ms. Casella, if you could go to the next slide. This depicts what we refer to as the CUP plan. This plan has already gone before the planning board on July 18th for a conceptual consultation that was very favorably received. The CUP plan gets rid of the commercial uses on the first floor, and it breaks up the massing of the front building into 3 buildings. We believe that this design is much softer for the neighborhood, and the buildings have reduced height and volume and better align with the lower density context of the southwestern side of the site. This plan also proposes to increase the height of the Kearsarge building along Foundry Place to help reestablish volume, height, and the historic characteristics of that building. The CUP plan also reuses the 6 commercial units and proposes ground floor residential uses for all 4 buildings, which is in keeping with the neighborhood. Total unit count for the CUP plan is 48 units. All 4 buildings have been redesigned to be more consistent with the historic characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood. This property is not located in the HDC, but these buildings were designed as if it were. Building A, it's a 4.5-story building. We call that the Kearsarge building. Building B, 3-story row house building. Building C, 3-story duplex building. And Building D is a 3.5-story apartment building. In order to build this project, we need zoning relief. And if you could go to the next slide, Ms. Casella. This slide depicts the zoning relief we need to move forward with the CUP plan. Primarily, it's relief from the ground floor commercial uses that are required in the downtown overlay district. Second, we need relief from the minimum first floor height. So if we were in the downtown overlay district, the commercial uses would require a 12-foot ground to floor to support the commercial use, and also to have a ground floor level that's elevated above the sidewalk for privacy reasons. So we're asking that the first floor height be reduced from 12 feet to 10 feet. And the third variance is for penthouse relief on the Kearsarge building. Penthouse levels are limited to an area of no greater than 50% of the gross living area of the level of the floor below. There's also a setback requirement that ranges from 8 to 15 feet from the edge of the roof. And these restrictions don't work for this project. We could build a mansard roof, but it's important to understand that the penthouse results in a more attractive building with actually less volume than the mansard, and I'll get into that in a little bit. If you could go to the next slide, please. The CUP plan also requires 10% workforce housing and 10% community space, which we'll see on this slide. The community space is a multimodal way that connects the public access, gets access to the public to Rock Street and Hill Street. And lastly is the relief we need for the penthouse, which we believe creates a better looking building design and actually has less volume and massing than what you would see in the as-of-right plan. The next slide contains a couple of what-if scenarios. The first is a picture showing the next one, I'm sorry. Thank you. The vested design view plan, that's with the ground floor commercial uses. The next slide is the vested plan with no ground floor commercial. And the third is the preferred plan, which requires the variances that we seek here tonight. Because variances 1 and 2 were tied together, we would ask for separate votes on these and a separate vote for variance request number 1. So with that background, I'd like to go through the zoning criteria. First, granting the requested variance would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the ordinance nor contrary to the public interest. The test here is whether or not granting the variance would substantially alter the characteristics of the neighborhood or threaten the health, safety, and welfare of the public. In this case, if the variances are granted, there would be no change to the essential characteristics of the neighborhood, nor would any public health, safety, or welfare be threatened. Properties located at the transition from the larger and taller buildings located along Foundry Place and Hill Street to the smaller, more traditionally sized buildings along Hanover and Rock Street. Approval of the variance to allow ground floor residential uses would promote health, safety, and welfare of the public. This is a densely populated residential neighborhood where really no businesses should be located. With respect to the next variance for the minimum floor height, we're proposing 10 feet as opposed to 12 feet. And by granting this relief, it would allow for appropriately sized residential first floor heights. And with respect to the penthouse relief that we seek, it would promote health, safety, and welfare. The alternative is to our penthouse relief is the as-of-right mansard roof that actually would result in over 95% of the gross floor area of the floor below with no setback relief from the roof edge. So granting this variance would improve the building design and reduce the overall volume of the building and provide better aesthetics. Next, substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. And this requires the board to conduct a balancing test. If the hardship upon the owner outweighs any benefit to the general public in denying the variance, then substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. In this case, there's no benefit to the public in denying the variance that's not outweighed by hardship upon the owner. The public would certainly not benefit from the commercial uses in this neighborhood. Because of the location here, we consider it very marginal for a business to locate. So you have to consider the type of business that would want to locate there. We think ground floor is bad. Ground floor commercial uses are bad for the applicant, bad for the neighborhood, and bad for any potential business that locates there. It's just not a good place for a business in the city of Portsmouth. As for the minimum floor height for the first floor, we believe substantial justice is promoted by granting the variances to allow appropriately sized first floor residential units. And with respect to the penthouse relief, substantial justice is accomplished because we can actually build a smaller, more attractive building with no mansard roof. Next, we turn to the value of surrounding properties that would not be diminished by granting the variances to allow the CUP plan to move forward. These variances will help support higher property values by getting rid of the first floor commercial uses. Also, there's no parking requirement for the commercial uses in the downtown overlay district, so any patron of the commercial uses will have to take valuable on-street parking. Then you also have to consider the noise and the light impacts of having commercial uses in this location. With respect to the first floor height, the shorter ground floor height will improve the design of the upper floors of the building, so it will promote added value to the surrounding properties in that respect. And with respect to the penthouse relief, we see no impact to property values because the better aesthetics are being promoted as a result of not having the as-of-right mansard and would actually have overall less building volume. So overall, our CUP plan is more attractive than the as-of-right plan, and we believe helps promote better property values. Next, we turn to hardship due to the special conditions of this property. Two historic structures on this property date back to the late 19th century. Although the property has legal frontage on Hanover Street, it has a right-of-way to access Hill Street, which is a private way and fronts along Foundry Place and Rock Street. However, the city owns a strip of land consisting of 7,300 square feet between the property and the city's right-of-way for Foundry Place and Rock Street. This is also the only property in this section of the north end that spans from Foundry Place to Hanover Street. The property also has an 8-foot grade change from Foundry Place to Hill Street. Also, the existing historic building is located between the 50 space surface parking lot, which is more than 100 feet from Hanover Street. These special conditions create a hardship for any commercial uses. The variance will allow us to have a better building design which is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. With respect to the minimum floor height, a 12-foot first floor would be out of context. It would really serve no purpose in this situation. And with respect to the penthouse relief, if you grant this variance, the building will actually have less volume, a better design, and no mansard roof. Use is also reasonable. All these uses being proposed are permitted in the CD5. And lastly, no fair or substantial relationship between the purpose of the ordinance as it's applied to this particular property. The requirements for ground floor commercial added to first floor height and the smaller penthouse attic do not present fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the ordinance as it's applied to this particular property. If you grant our relief for ground floor residences, it will avoid any off-site impacts the commercial activity would have on this location, which benefits the public and will help increase property values. Also, the shorter ground floor height that we seek improves and provides a better design for the upper floors. Again, adds value to the property, the project, and the neighborhood. And lastly, the setbacks and gross living requirements of the penthouse on the existing historic structure bears no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the ordinance and this particular property. If you allow the penthouse relief that we seek, the building will be smaller in volume than the alternative mansard. In conclusion, I just want to emphasize that our CUP plan is the result of comments we received from the planning board, city staff, and some members of the public. The CUP plan meets the goals and objectives of the North End Vision Plan. We also believe it has a better design, more sensitive to the surrounding neighborhood. And by providing covered parking, all the residential units, for all the residential units, it really achieves a significant benefit for the neighborhood. The CUP plan also comes with community space in the form of the multimodal way and much-needed workforce housing. From some of the comments we received from the planning board, this is a well-conceived building site and design that provides an incremental and well-balanced transition from the high-density mixed-use developments located along Foundry Place and Hill Street to the lower-density established neighborhoods along Hanover and Rock Street. So for all these reasons, we do respectfully ask for your approval of the 3 variances that we've advertised this evening, again, in separate votes. Before I conclude, I just have a little feedback based on some of the letters that I've read that the public has submitted, and hopefully it helps not only the public but this board in reaching a conclusion. Some of the letters written by the neighbors appear to have drawn conclusions over the height of the buildings or parking and traffic and building design and roof types and penthouses. And I just wanted to do a very quick summary on these topics. Parking. Our CUP plan provides for 71 off-street parking spaces for the 48 units. So all the parking that's required under the ordinance is met, plus there'll be 10 visitor parking spaces, all invisible to the public. Traffic. We did a full traffic analysis that will be submitted to the Technical Advisory Committee for its review, and then they would advise the planning board to ensure that the traffic improvements meet the city's site plan approval requirements. Comments about Building D. Building D is not a 4-story building under the Portsmouth zoning ordinance. Building D is a 3-story building with a hip-type mansard roof, which is characterized as an attic under the ordinance. This building is 40 feet in height as required by the ordinance. Building A is not taller than the Foundry Place garage. Building A is proposed to be 4 stories with a penthouse level, 52 feet in height, which is the maximum height allowed under the North End Incentive Overlay District. The parking garage is 62 feet. Will a variance for the penthouse make Building A larger? That was one of the comments. And the answer to that is no. The alternative mansard would be significantly larger in volume. The proposed penthouse in the CUP plan is 80% of the size of the floor below, where the mansard would be closer to 95%. And also the penthouse would not be visible even with the 8-foot setback that's being proposed. 8 feet is adequate to hide the penthouse level from the sidewalk adjacent to the building. And just for reference, 100 Market Street has an 8-foot setback. That penthouse is partially visible from across the street. So hopefully, that helps the board, it helps the neighbors. That concludes our presentation. Obviously, my team is here to answer any questions that the board may have.
Does anybody have questions before we open the meeting? Yes.
Just a quick question. So under the vested or in the alternative cut plan, well, actually the one that has the ground floor commercial uses, you said that that area is not, doesn't lend itself to commercial uses. What kind of commercial uses were contemplated for that? Was it like office space, or was it something that relies on street traffic, or?
It's hard to tell. I mean, it's available space for anybody who wants to rent it. I don't think it would make a great office space. It could be a convenience store. It could be a hair salon. It could be some type of retail spot. But whatever it is, it's going to require employees and customers. And those people are going to have to find parking on the street because parking is not required in the downtown overlay district. So that was an issue. And the other issue is whatever commercial use locates there is not really going to be, it's not part of the, it's in the downtown overlay district, but it's really not visible to the downtown. So people are going to have to walk there. They're going to have to know it's there. There's not going to be any visibility. So as we kick this around and we actually talk this through with the planning board and the conceptual consultations, we all kind of came to the conclusion this is not a good site for commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Mantle?
Yeah, I'm going through your application, and you've made the point of your 3 variances. Where is the illustration for the attic level setbacks? Where is your drawing? Where is your design?
John, you want to take that? We don't have our architect with us tonight. Steve might be able to answer that, Mr. Yeah.
Yes, please,
You
go
have to
ahead.
introduce yourself.
So if you look at the,
Could you introduce yourself, please?
my name is Steve Wilson, I'm the owner of the property and the applicant. So if you look at the CUP plan with no commercial, and you look to the left, you see a 4th floor to that building, which illustrates a setback. It's over to the left of the chimney, and then in a covered outdoor area to the left on the corner, which appears to be built out to the leading edge, but it's not. And we didn't fully develop the architectural plan for that, but the guidelines for penthouses are well defined in the ordinance. We're hoping that there's, as our Attorney Bozen said, it's actually a net reduction in rentable or occupiable area, but it softens the building from the street. We had fully developed the plans for the design review plan that we had previously had vested at the planning board, and didn't, obviously in this package, there's no clear illustration of that penthouse. However, all the rules of a penthouse would still be in effect, and the architecture would be developed with the planning board. So,
Are there any other questions for the applicant before we open the, yes,
I think Tom has
I'm
one.
sorry, Mr. Neese?
I've got a number of questions. Do you want me to just go through them one at a time?
I think this is the time, yeah.
So I'll start out with the process that's being followed here. I'm a little bit confused. You've got a proposal that's been through design review at the planning board. and you're coming in here with what's called the CUP proposal, which has had an informal consultation, preliminary consultation, whatever that's called, with the planning board. If these variances are approved, are you committing to developing the CUP proposal and withdrawing the other proposal?
I believe that's the case, yes.
Okay, thank you. In your package, I think it's page 23 of our package, page 1 of your submission, you say that the planning board supported the CUP proposal. When I reviewed the record of the planning board minutes, there was no action taken by the planning board. There were some individual comments by planning board members that indicated that they might look favorably on it. There were also some that brought up concerns about both proposals. So I'm curious of what justifies the claim that the planning board supported the CUP proposal, since they took no formal action.
Well, no formal action is taken at preliminary conceptual, but we felt as a team, we walked away feeling good about the comments that were raised. And prior to that meeting, and we spoke with city staff, we all felt collectively that the planning board was collectively supportive, maybe not unanimously, but we felt as though collectively that the CUP plan was something that they would support. But obviously, we can't make that formal application until we get through this board. If we don't get through this board, we plan to go back to the planning board with the as-of-right plan.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm a little unclear on exactly what the CUP is granting you. Is this just the additional floor for the North End Incentive Overlay District that's being applied to Building A? Is that the only CUP incentive that you're taking advantage of?
Right. I mean, that's why we asked for 2 votes, because we obviously want to have, residential on the ground floor, and then the CUP plan, maybe for lack of a better word, we would be seeking the additional volume, additional height in the North End Incentive, and then providing the community space and the workforce housing that's required in that section of the ordinance.
In order to get the additional space?
Correct, yeah.
Could you point out to me, I was struggling a little bit to follow where the community space is located.
Yeah, the community space is the multimodal way that connects the, Steve, maybe you can just go up and point it. There is a slide, Mr. Casella, it's called the CUP plan. Yeah, they're right there. You could, that slide depicts the,
Page 41.
the community space. Oops, sorry. It's not working, but it's the multimodal way that you see right there that connects the neighborhood to, the Hill Street, the Rock Street to Hill Street.
So this is what I'm struggling with. So is that all behind the retaining wall that's along Foundry Way?
That's between, yeah, well, the retaining wall is behind Building A. That's sort of in, yeah, come on.
The answer to that question is no. The multimodal way, if you look at the, do you have a point? Yes. Okay. So if you look at Rock Street on the left, and you see the brick landing, if you will, the multimodal way extends from Rock Street laterally to the right on this plan, along the front of Building A and the rear of Building B, C, and D, so between the buildings. And a pedestrian or bicyclist, et cetera, would be able to pass between Rock Street and Hill Street and on down to, so it connects this sidewalk behind Foundry, that they've constructed behind Foundry Place, the new building, right where it says Hill Street, to Rock Street, which has at this time, because my office is in the corner of the Building A, right next to where it says Hill Street, So that's already a pretty active pedestrian boulevard going through there. So we would have that open, and that would provide that multimodal way.
So this multimodal way is also serving as the driveway for access to the parking in the buildings?
No, no, the driveway is within the blue section here, and there's a tactile, a paver that establishes an 8-foot wide, I think it's 8 feet wide in front of our building. So there's room between the buildings for both of those things. So a resident here could enter the building A at the center and drive across that multimodal way.
Okay. Thanks for that. I've got additional questions here. I'm not sure who I'm asking them to. Okay. I'm a little confused on the discussion of the height of Building A. Now, I may have misunderstood what you were saying. Were you saying that if you didn't get the penthouse on Building A under the CUP plan, that it would be bigger than the as-of-right design, or were you saying it would be bigger than the building would be if you get the penthouse?
Okay, so I'll directly answer that question if I can preface it, because it was a little confusing in the narrative, in the discussion tonight. The way I view this is the elimination of the commercial and the acceptance of the apartment row house design that you see here are in my mind, a separate decision, okay, for the developer, and I think subsequently for you. The elimination of the commercial level in the buildings, if we go back to the slide that shows the CUP plan, it actually allows us to lower the overall elevation of Building B and Building C. So instead of instead of adding another story of residential, we've actually eliminated the lower level of residential. And so those buildings in stature are well under the 40-foot allowed by the current zoning. That allows us to terrace the property from the 60 and 70-foot buildings on the northeast corner and transition to the residential neighborhood on the southwest corner of the project. The CUP refers to an incentive in the north end overlay district, which is still subject to approval by the planning board. And even if you denied the penthouse and they subsequently approved the CUP plan, I would be entitled to build a mansard roof on that level, which instead of having an overall elevation floor to top of roof of 10 feet and change, it would be 16 feet to 18 feet because the roof, the elevation of the building is measured differently. So that's a fundamental idiosyncrasy of the zoning. It would still, so elimination of the first floor commercial, I think, is the most, is very important for us because we'd wind up with some undesirable retail commercial space, and the building would have to maintain its 40-foot height. The approval of the penthouse is actually purely an architectural tool. Okay, so it takes and it puts a lower real building height in play for us, therefore presenting less of a visual obstacle from the residential neighborhood looking back, not just this setback from the edge of the roof, but also the real elevation of the building, because the mansard or pitched roof is measured to the center of the roof, and a penthouse is measured to the to the top of the roof. So I hope that doesn't further confuse you, and I hope I answered your question, but if I didn't.
No, I don't think you did answer my question.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'm confused a little bit because I'm not sure what you're referring to. It's my understanding that your as-of-right design would be 3 stories plus a mansard roof.
Correct.
So I don't have any drawings here to say what that would look like, but I'm assuming that 3 stories is roughly 30-some feet, plus your mansard roof, if it's 16 feet, it gets up somewhere above 40, but it doesn't get to 50.
No, it has to stay under 40.
Okay, it has to stay under 40. On the other hand, your cut plan you're showing as 52 feet. So I was a little confused because it sounded to me like you were saying the as-of-right plan would be higher than the cut plan. And I don't see that. I think what you meant to say is that getting the penthouse is lower than the cut plan with a mansard roof.
That's correct.
Thank you. Moving on, give me a second here to get to my notes. If I might keep going?
You can. I just want to take 1 minute to say that Attorney McCourt is here, should we want some more advice at some point during this evening. Just letting you know.
Okay.
Okay. You can continue.
I'm a little confused on what's on the first floor of Building A. There's 2 versions of the site plan, drawing C3 in the packet. Both have the same revision date on them. One says first floor, one says first floor residential, one says C floor plans. The floor plan doesn't show residential. I'm assuming part of it's parking, but I'm curious whether there was also residential on that first floor under the CUP plan.
Yes, the front 20 or so feet is residential or commercial, depending on with or without the variance. So we're just converting what would be the commercial to 2 residential units.
Okay. Moving on to Building D. I'm a little confused with the references to Building D as being a 3-story building when there's information in the packet in a number of places that says it's 3.5 stories. And that confuses me a little bit because of the description in our zoning ordinance on what constitutes a half-story and what a mansard roof is or isn't and what an attic is or isn't. So I'm a little confused why your attorney referred to it as a 3-story building in the presentation, but in the package it says it's a 3.5-story building. If it's a 3.5-story building, it seems to be higher than is authorized because it's only authorized 3 stories. So could you reconcile that discrepancy for me?
I'll say that it's a confusing caveat to the zoning regulations. The area under a roof is considered an attic. It's not considered a 3.5-story building. It's considered a 3-story building. And the zoning allows the attic to have habitable space. So it is a little misleading or a little confusing to everyone, I think.
So why does your package refer to it as a 3.5-story?
It's a typographical error.
It's in several places on the drawings and everything. And in your table of development standards, for example, on page 23 of your package, it's listed as 3.5 stories.
So it's 40 feet in a 3-story building as defined by the zoning. I can't speak to why it says 3.5 stories in there, but there is a technical difference, so I understand your concern. The zoning board is the planning board is gonna make sure that it's a 3-story building. They're not gonna allow a 3.5-story building. So what it says in our package is not gonna override or determine, and we're not asking for that relief from you. These will still be 3-story buildings.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
And, yes, Mr. Rossi.
In the what you call the as-of-right plan versus the CUP plan, how many residential units are in the as-of-right plan, and how many are in the CUP plan?
In the as-of-right plan, there are 42 units. In the six of those are commercial units, and 36 of them are residential units.
Okay, and then the CUP plan?
The CUP plan, if the CUP is allowed, would add 6 residential units to the top floor of the Building A. It would not impact, that would be the impact of Building A, but it would also eliminate 4 commercial units in the front because we lowered Building B and C.
So the total number
Total.
in the cut plan is what?
The total number of units in the CUP plan is 42 in the back building, 32 in the back building, and 14 in the front building.
Say
So a
14?
total of 46.
One of our criteria is this balance of interests, basically, in the substantial justice. And I'd like to, said something that was a little curious to me. If it doesn't make any difference to you whether or not you get the variance for the penthouse, what is your loss if you don't, what is the loss to the property owner if you don't get that?
Well, if you're talking about the property owner, that's me.
I know that.
Okay, sorry.
That's why you were
Sorry, you're
perfect
talking
person
third
to answer that
person. I
question.
just wanted to make that clear. So I didn't say that it's unimportant, because I think the two things that we heard loud and clear with our original plan is it did not transition from the taller northeast corner of the property to the shorter southeast corner of the project. And so if we're granted the penthouse, and the other thing is the overall impact of the elevation of the project. So approval of the penthouse as a tool in the project will result in an overall reduction of the real height of the buildings.
But why is that important to you?
Why is it important to me? Because I like to have a good quality development, and I like to have good-looking architecture, whether the HDC is forcing it, and I'm receptive to the neighbors that live there, so I think that, I need to be totally sensitive to the relevant and comments. So I'm just saying that it's not unimportant to me, it's just that I think if I was weighting them, I think the first floor commercial is really important to everyone. And the allowance of the penthouse roof just allows me to have a lesser impact. It actually reduces the number of units by 2 overall. But I don't think everything has to be maxed out all the time. And so it was really in response to the concerns of the planners, the planning board, and the neighborhood. And I think when I look at it, I completely agree with them. So it's hard for me to promote a plan that I think can be improved.
Thank you. I think my next question is for Attorney Bozen. Can you restate or rephrase the hardship justification for the penthouse?
Yes. Overall, the hardship results to the land in its entirety, and, there is this 8-foot grade difference that exists. There is the fact that there's this 7,300 square foot strip of land that's city-owned right away between our property and Foundry Place. I think those are clearly elements of the land that create hardship.
How does that hardship relate to the penthouse?
Well, because by granting the penthouse relief, we get a better-looking building with less volume when you take into consideration the grade change. So we just felt like when you looked at that, you get a better-looking building with less volume than you have with the penthouse versus the mansard. You could argue it's splitting hairs, but the property is, if you've been there, you see that grade change. It is a fact of, we think it's If it was a flat lot, it'd be a different argument, but it has this grade change, and when you add, we think the penthouse creates an overall less looking, it has less massing and less volume with the relief that we're seeking as opposed to the relief, the building that could be designed with the mansard. So we took the grade change in that strip of land into consideration. We thought it was a hardship.
Thank you.
I go? Or have you? Okay. So I think I have a more basic question. So Building B sits on the corner and it's 3 stories. And Building C is the blue one in the middle. And Building D is the green with the mansard roof. Why do I see almost nothing of Building A? Does it not have another side to it? I feel like I don't know anything about Building A. I have no picture of the penthouse, even though you're asking for a lot of relief for the penthouse. I just am not sure I have enough information about this, so tell me.
I think what you see in the penthouse is what you see in the, I mean, there's not a lot of design elements to it. We didn't fully design it because until we have the relief, we don't, it didn't make sense to go to full design review.
But how do we do the relief without seeing what the penthouse looks like? How
Well, I
tall
think-
it is and what it
Well-
looks like from another side?
It's 52 feet. You could see, I think the best comparison is, I forget the name, I think it might be slide number 7, but you'll see the view of both buildings. What I consider, what we talk about, refer to as the design review plan and the CUP plan. They're 2 completely different looking buildings. I think your eye is easily more drawn to the alternative CUP plan. But yes, there's not a lot of architectural details on the
No,
on the
but
penthouse.
normally we do see those.
Mr. Wilson, you have something to add?
Just 2 things. First of all, we submitted, in our submittal, the broader submittal, there's no slide here for it on page 12. You'll see a picture of the back building from the front in the as of right condition. Also, we submitted plans, floor plans to staff at the planning department, and she may have access to that right now to throw up on the screen.
More floor
But
plans than we had.
I want to just say, it was, if first of all, we didn't mean to usurp your right to see the penthouse as it's going to be, but I did fall short of engaging the architect to do a full-blown rendering of that area. If, I felt that would be okay. That's
It's
your
unusual for
decision,
us.
yeah, okay.
It's
And I'm
unusual
getting
for
that, and
us.
I'm getting that now, Chairman. So, excuse me. So, I do want that portion, that variance to have its best opportunity to be accepted. And I don't want to try to talk you into that, okay?
So far, we don't know if anyone else agrees with me, so we can, yes, Mr. Neal.
Could I follow up that point a little bit?
Yes.
On page 20 of your package, 20 of our package is page 42. There's a figure 12, which shows Building A and it looks like, I forget which building it is, I think it's Building B right next to it. And I'm looking at that, and it looks like the first floor on Building A is much higher than the first 2 floors of the building next to it. What confuses me about that is if I go forward to page 45 in our package, there's a table, and I don't think I'm misinterpreting the table. Down near the bottom of the table, it says ground story height, and it says Building A 10 feet, Building B 12, Building C 12, and I think Building D 12 as well. I'm having difficulty reconciling those measurements with the figure. And this is kind of my same point that I think a couple other members of the board have meant, is that it's difficult to figure out what Building A actually looks like, given what we have in front of us and some of the other information.
So after going through the package again, on page 20 of the submittal, you'll see a very close, a much closer view of the four-unit townhouse building or row house, and you see the architecture behind it. That is all I have to show you tonight. So if it's, I'm understanding that it's important to that particular variance tonight. So as a matter of suggestion, and I don't even know if this is possible for the board, I'd be happy to table the vote on the penthouse in order to better illustrate it to have a better chance of a positive outcome. And I'd ask that we could move forward with the first floor commercial and apartment building type request, because I feel as though they really are disjointed. So I don't want to press the wrong answer out of the board without proper information on the penthouse.
It's up to us if we want to go ahead this way. Yes, Beth?
I'm a little reluctant to start bifurcating the application, just because it really holds together as a package. I mean, I think that the height of the penthouse is properly before the planning board as a cup. But that said, you are asking for relief from the gross living area percentage and the penthouse setback. And we really would need to have visual representations of that and have, I think, the board be satisfied that we have enough adequate information to make that determination. I think I would prefer that we do this kind of all at once.
I feel insecure about Building A as it is, penthouse or no penthouse. So, yes, Mr.
No,
Mayor.
I just have a question for the applicant.
Okay.
Okay. In a number of letters we've received from the neighborhood, they're telling us the story that your preferred CUP has been in front of the planning board since May, correct?
I don't think so. I think in May we had the vested plan. I can't answer that question without referencing it. I think it was in July. July 18th is when we presented that alternate plan. We hadn't developed it in May at all.
Okay,
So I think that would have been a tough one.
okay, but that was at the planning board, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Have you had subsequent meetings with the planning board regarding your alternate CUP?
No.
Okay.
I think we had one more work session just to present some other, was it just July? Okay, thank you. And we've gone to a TAC work session since then. I think how we move forward, I just want to offer this, how we move forward with the architecture, even the request for clear illustration of the building is really contingent on the first floor commercial. They're very much different architectural elevations on that level, but also we stopped the process of the planning board moving forward with it 6 months ago in order to develop this plan. And I hate to mention economics, but it sounds like I've fallen short on the architectural component to it. It certainly sounds like it to this group. If we illustrate Building A and the penthouse, shall we what shall we presume? A no answer to the commercial conversion or a yes answer?
I
It's-
don't think you can presume anything.
No, I know, that's my quandary here, okay, so.
Nor does anyone
I'm not
else
going to
who comes
presume
before
anything,
us.
so
Yeah.
that's, my input to it, and I do want the board to have a clear picture of our plan moving forward, so.
Okay, my question is basically directed at these letters where the public has had no input into your, and that's what I'm trying to discover, is the fact that if you had your as right back in May, and you've been developing this alternative CUP since that time, haven't gone back to the planning board, so the public hasn't weighed in on this plan at all. Neither has the planning board as a whole. Correct?
I believe that the hearing we went to was open to the public, and we also had we're following the procedure of the planning board. And in order to move forward with the planning board, we have to get some answers on what we're here to request tonight. So it's a bit of a chicken and an egg, and they have had input on the plan. The neighbors, we had a neighborhood meeting last week, which was pretty well attended. And so I'm not sure what level of exposure, but it's all going to have to be presented at public hearings at the planning board. And nobody is presuming they're going to say yes to the alternate plan.
Well, I understand that. But my point is, the public hasn't weighed in on your alternate plan at all,
Well, that's not.
because it's never been presented
Well, we've had.
to a board.
At a public.
We've had two preliminary conceptual consultations. We've had one design review. We've had a site walk. We've had a TAC meeting, and there's been a public meeting. So this has been a very public process, but we can't go any further without zoning relief. If we don't get the zoning relief, then we go back to the planning board for full submission with our as-of-right plan, and we have another public hearing. We haven't done anything that hasn't been provided, we're following the
I haven't
ordinance.
said it was not a public process. I'm saying that, according to the letters we've received, the public, the abutters, haven't had the opportunity to weigh in on your alternative CUP plan at the planning board or the HTC. Is that correct?
No, there's no HTC.
Well, we haven't had to go to the HTC because we're not in the historic district. So at a preliminary conceptual consultation, the public, it's not a public hearing, but they've attended. There has been a design review hearing that the public was able to weigh in on, but that was the as-of-right plan.
Okay. I'm
With
gonna cut you off
respect to
right
the
here. It's a
CUP
simple question. It's a yes or no answer.
Yes, we've had a public hearing.
Has the
Yes.
public
Yes.
had the opportunity for public comment, public hearing at the planning board on your alternative CUP plan?
No, that wouldn't happen until we
Thank
file
you.
a full submission.
That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. What do we want to do? Do you want to consider this piecemeal? Do you want to?
If I could make a
Yes,
suggestion, I
I
think we
would
should
love to.
continue with the public hearing. Yeah.
Okay, even though we may not be full. Okay.
Because I think at the conclusion of the public hearing, we could decide whether or not we should continue it
Yeah.
for more information.
Okay.
So-
I do want to say one more thing also, that Ms. Record will be voting in lieu of Mr. Rayon tonight, so.
I just have one last question before we go.
Yes.
Sorry, this will be quick. So Attorney Bozen, this is a question for you. You've talked about one of your plans being vested. There hasn't been a zoning change in this area that would require you, that would affect your property. It's still CD5, correct?
Correct.
All right, so it's just a little confusing because
It did say
vested usually
vested, yeah.
means that there's been a zoning change. There's been no zoning changes.
No, but we've had a design review, though, which does vest us for zoning purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Come forward.
Let me clarify. My name is Peter Hapney. I'm at 66 Rock Street. Am I speaking in favor of all three variances now, or whether you're going to continue with this?
You're telling us your opinion of the petition.
Telling me what?
What you think of the petition.
Oh, okay.
Pro or con.
All right. Being on Rock Street since 1978, and starting out with a building with no roof, the neighborhood's changed. I'm now in the 5-story corridor. And good ornamentation, good architecture in my area is somewhat difficult to find. There have been some good indications. The project down the way towards Reese's, the developer asked me what I thought of it. I said it looks like Soviet architecture and it depresses me. Being a member of making products, ornamentation, I made the city seal years ago when Cal Canny was here. Ornamentation and good architecture is part of what the city's about. I know you guys have to respond to the rules and regulations. This developer has done some of the better buildings in Portsmouth in the last 10 years. I trust him. I trust he's going to do a good job. I'm the person that's going to have to look at the back of the building. I've seen some of the ornamentation directed towards that. I feel it's positive. It can add to the neighborhood. If you don't own the property next door, change is going to happen. If we were in the country, we all can complain more, but in the city, you don't own that lot. So if you can work with something that visually is pleasing, something that stimulates your flavor for shape and form, it's well worth the process. And I would advocate that you be flexible on choosing the variances that he's asked. Commercial property in my area doesn't work. Reducing the height allows some of the buildings to be shorter. You don't need 12 feet for a residential space. Parking is all covered in that building, those buildings. Some of the public walkways really tie the Rock Street to Hill Street and back to the parking garage. So I think very positive towards it, and I'm the one that's probably most directly affected by the height of the big building. But I think there'll be good neighbors, and I think it will work positive for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak in favor of the petition?
Hi, my name is Robin Husledge, and I live at 27 Rock Street. Obviously, the developer's CUP plan is a big improvement over the as-of-right plan. There's just no debate about that. Unfortunately, for our neighborhood, the planning board applied the incorrect zoning of CD5 to this lot and included the downtown overlay on the back portion where the Heinemann building is located, allowing them to go another story higher. I'd like to point out that this CD5 zone property, the most dense zoning in the city, projects into our GRC and CD4L1 zoned historic neighborhood, which is the least dense zoning excuse me, in the city. I'm not going to go into the erroneous zoning of this part of our neighborhood at this meeting, as we are currently working with the planning board to have this error corrected. Rather, I'm looking to you, the Zoning Board of Adjustment, to encourage this developer to further tweak the CUP plan so that granting the requested variances can truly be justified and will not be contrary to the public interest and won't negatively impact our small historic neighborhood. I therefore request that if you decide that granting these 3 variances for their CUP plan is a better option than denying them, which may result in the developer moving forward with their as-of-right plan, which the developer has stated to our neighborhood, that you apply conditions on the approval of their variances as follows. Building B, the 3-story row house. Require that there is more significant modulation combined with design contrasts and color variations along the 80-foot length of this building to give the appearance of multiple townhouses rather than a very long monolithic building. Building D, towards the other end, the 3.5-story apartment building as described, require that the developer reduce the height down to a 3-story building like buildings B and C, and remove the mansard roof and replace it with a roof style consistent with our neighborhood, such as gable, saltbox, or flat. Building A with a penthouse addition, require that the penthouse be constructed with a dark siding material such as slate so that it appears smaller and distinctly separate from the building floors below, as has been done on a number of other new additions on historic buildings downtown, so that they don't appear as massive. Also require that all roof appurtenances be shielded from view. And if you deny the penthouse variance request for Building A, require that the developer must choose a roof style consistent with our neighborhood, such as gable, saltbox, or flat, and not choose a mansard-style roof, which is inconsistent with our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone to speak in opposition to the petition? I'm going to urge you to stay within the 5 minutes, please.
My best. Good evening, Elizabeth Bratter, property owner, 159 McDonough Street. Having read many site plans and gone through many, many meetings for developers for the last 12 to 15 years, this application has the least amount of information presented to be able to consider the 4 variances. Please postpone this application and ask the applicant to present the necessary facts to make an informed decision regarding these 4 variances. To allow the ground floor as residential or commercial, it is important to remember that buildings B, C, and D will have parking in them, but they do not show that, and how are they going to get in and out of there? To allow different building types, it is important to recognize that Building D has a mansard roof on it, and it has the widest girth of 72 feet versus the church, which only has a 40 feet out front, and the townhouses are 80 feet. As Robin mentioned, those could be changed in a way. Another important thing about the floor, the first floor, is it has very many different sizes being presented. The city presented it as a request for 10.5. During this meeting, the lawyer presented it as a 10-foot roof. The buildings B, C, and D are shown in the charts as 12 feet. The second floor is shown as 10.5 feet. The requested zoning relief shows it as 10.6 feet, which I believe was a typo, but that really should be cleaned up. This is a legal notice, as far as I understand, and that should be correct. The size of the penthouse, you all mentioned it, that Building A is kind of lacking. Like just last month, you guys looked at 84 Pleasant Street, and that penthouse showed all kinds of details. The penthouse, the Novacure, showed so many details. I was highly impressed by what they did show. But pretty much this penthouse has nothing. They don't show you the whole building. They don't show you anything about it, which Mr. Wilson just clarified that he would be happy to correct. Please do not move forward with these variances until you have all the facts that you need in order to make an informed decision about this objects. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in opposition?
Hi, I'm Jerry Gate at 91 Langdon Street. I think we all agree the CUP plan is very beautiful aesthetically. It's a big improvement. My issue is with this lot is in the North End Incentive Overlay District, which the owner has stated several times. You know, they're using that to do some enhanced density and following some rules and intent of that. One of the intent of the North End Overlay District was to facilitate this enhanced density on frontage on city core streets. So I believe every other building in the North End Incentive Overlay District empties out into Deer Street or Foundry Street. There's many other buildings that have high density residential, and they're all emptying out onto that street. This building actually has frontage on both sides, Hanover and Foundry Street, yet we're not utilizing that as the ordinance states and it is intended. There is frontage on the street. There's, I believe, 78 parking spots that will be now dumping onto a neighborhood slow street that the city has classified as a neighborhood slow street. The definition of that from the Portsmouth Complete Streets Guide is they're not intended for through traffic, make use of traffic calming measures to discourage motor vehicle traffic and reduce speeds to create a comfortable environment for walking and biking. These buildings are 2 feet off the sidewalk. It's my issue is that the intent of this ordinance is for us to have dense residential and commercial emptying out into city core streets. I think it's great we have dense housing. I think we need more housing. I think the issue is that we're ignoring the intent of the ordinance by allowing this building to utilize a neighborhood slow street instead of the intent, which is to utilize a city core street.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Come on up. You may form a line if it's easier.
Good evening. My name is Ollery Lane. My dog and I, Isha, live at 306 Hanover Street. We've been living there for 4 years. And I just wanted to speak out against this entire project. I'm speaking out because this afternoon I was out walking and Asia said to me, "Hey Mom, you know what? There are only 2-story buildings here in our neighborhood, on Hanover Street, on Parker Street, on Rock Street, on Pearl Street, on McDonough, the whole neighborhood. There are no penthouses." Asia said to me, "You know, Mom, I don't think we're penthouse kind of people." She's a smart dog. I listened to her. My concern is this. There's a serious parking issue in my neighborhood. Islington Creek tried to do, and we did have a pilot program for a while. I understand that they would be having parking for this building. So if there are 42 or 48 units, they all get 2 parking spaces. That's great. What if half of them have friends over? Where are those 20 people going to park? It's treasure hunt parking in my neighborhood right now because we don't have adequate parking. 7 spaces were taken off of Hanover Street when they changed the size of parking. I start to feel that the downtown has huge buildings. Our neighborhood, I mean, you can't go down Maplewood. We've lost our bridge right now. We lost a lot of things, but it just starts to feel like with the new Foundry Place, with the new hotel that's going up across the street from that, the buildings are getting bigger and kind of encroaching into our neighborhood, which are 2-story multi-use type of homes. The other thing I wanted to mention, the multimodal area, it's so narrow there now, especially with the new condos that have gone up, that if they're going to have cars there, it's not going to be safe for people walking their dogs or on a skateboard or motor scooters. It's very narrow and very compact. I just would like to see something happen that wasn't these big buildings that they have to take up all the space. That Heinemann building is a really interesting building. I know it's cheaper to build up than it is out. So they could build up on that Heinemann building, use that parking lot that's there and renovate it and give us some parking in our area. I would be so appreciative, and I think other people would too. I guess my overall question too is about the workforce housing. You're talking about several units for 3 people to live in 600 square feet. That's not much space. 2 bedrooms, I believe, is what the slide said. 2 bedrooms, 3 people, 600 square feet. I'm concerned about that. And I guess my bottom line question is...
Excuse me. It said that the cost of the building was based on that federal guideline for a family of 3. It didn't say that that was necessarily.
Then
I understand.
Perhaps
it
that
wasn't there for.
Perhaps that information on that slide. I don't know if I missed an asterisk. I apologize if I did.
No, I just want you to say
Okay,
it wasn't
thank you.
necessarily.
Thank you. It just feels like with all the new buildings that are in our neighborhood now, it just starts to feel like that's encroaching. And I'd like to see some space, maybe We have a small park there now. Again, who gets to live in Portsmouth? And what does that really look like? What does it mean to live in Portsmouth? And I think that that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Nicole Pierre, 44 Rock Street. I am a direct abutter to 361 Hanover. My family's house was built in 1787, and it's 20 feet high. So I'm just going to skim through this in the interest of all our sanity to certain points. Character district zoning is intended to encourage development that is compatible with the established character of its surroundings. So herein lies the core issue. The zoning of this area was not properly done, as I feel we all well know, and the backside story behind it is not a good one, and it was completely unjust to the neighborhood, and I just simply won't get over that. But the problem for the developer is it's CD5 zoned, but to be compatible with its surroundings, on one side you're walking towards downtown where bigger buildings have been built, but if you're standing in front of the Heinemann building to the left, that's a neighborhood with small colonial homes. So the cluster we're in is, I can't even, like I said, articulate my level of frustration. Many of my neighbors wrote in about how it hasn't gone through TAC yet, and the issue with that is, with the new plan, aesthetically, what we've seen of it, is it a better plan? Yes, but it does up the number of residential units, so people living there, and it lowers the number of parking spots, so that's problematic. So it's notable that it is zone CD5, but the streets, as Jerry had said, the streets the developer is planning to use to service this building, Hanover, Rock, Pearl, and Parker, are not CD5 zone streets. They're very small, narrow, and I don't think, and if you walk or drive down them, I don't think you would either, can handle the density of this, and it will result in countless safety, parking, and traffic obstacles. So for me, as a homeowner and a resident, that's where my property becomes diminished, and my safety and the safety of my children and children in the neighborhood gets a little dicey, because how cars are coming in and out of the proposed driveway, the multimodal walkway that is considered green space is laughable, because who's going to send their kid a bike or whatever down it, or walk their dog down it, because that's where cars are parked in tandem and pull out. It's crazy to me. But anyways, I'm going to leave my last point as not a single rendering of what the project would look like from Foundry Place has been given, and many people have stated that. But I am, in terms of my profession, I'm a visual arts teacher, and I'm a visual person and an artist, and there is a complete lack of visual transparency in this project. There is not enough renderings to fully understand the scale and actual intended aesthetics of each building from each side. Not just, I would argue, not just Building A with the proposed penthouse. I would argue all buildings, it's not clear what they would look like. The building heights are out of character with our neighborhood, do not meet the goals of the characteristic, and diminish property values. It's not there yet. Is it better? Yes, it's not there yet. And based on the incomplete nature of this application, I oppose these variances as a direct abutter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in opposition?
Yes, please, Chair Eldridge. John Lyons, members of the board. I represent the Hill Hanover Group, LLC, who is a legal abutter to this project. If you look on the applicant's package on page 9, you'll see a diagram with this project outlined in blue. The figure 7. If you look at lot 125-14, you see 3 buildings there. Those are my client's property. That would be 317, 319, 327, 329, 337, and 339 Hanover Street. Behind those properties is Hill Street. And you'll see on this Exhibit 7, the applicant has admitted that Hill Street which is a private right-of-way, runs behind my client's properties into the parking area that's proposed to be developed. My client owns that right-of-way. There is a dispute, which will obviously end up in the Superior Court, where I've talked to my friend Attorney Bozen about that. That right-of-way has been blocked by Mr. Wilson, by a traffic cone, etc. And while you are certainly not a court of law, you're the Zoning Board of Adjustment, this issue becomes very, very relevant tonight, because Attorney Bozen indicated, and in the applicant's package, they specifically indicate that they have the right to use Hill Street as an access point. They have denied our right of access, but they claim they have a right-of-way. They specifically indicated in their application. They do not. That right-of-way belongs to us and not to the applicant. Hill Street is a narrow, small way. At the TAC meeting that occurred last week, it was represented that fire, vehicles, police, pedestrians would be using Hill Street as part of this development. That would be a significant overburdening of a very narrow right-of-way. It would also directly and negatively impact the value of my client's property. If you looked at the diagram that my friend Attorney Bozen had up before, the way that multimodal way is established, it goes between buildings C and D, you make a right-hand turn, and where are you going to go? You're going to drive right down that private right-of-way that's known as Hill Street. That will have a significant, significant negative impact on my client's property and the people who live in those buildings. And for those reasons, we're objecting to the requested variances 1 and 2. We'll be before the planning board as well. The other issue is that the applicant's property is a condominium, and they own Unit A. And when that condominium was created, Kimball Chase prepared a site plan which sets out the Hill Street right-of-way. And not only does that right-of-way run behind my client's properties to Mr. Wilson's property, it takes a left and runs right through the parking lot to Hanover Street under Building D that they propose to build. And we're going to be moving and requesting the court for relief. So not only we are objecting to the requested variances that are before you tonight because they do not meet the necessary criteria. There's really no hardship here. But we're going to be objecting to the development as a whole. So respectfully, on behalf of my client, Hill Hanover, for the reasons I've submitted, we respectfully request that you deny the variances as advertised and requested.
Could you hold on a second?
Sure.
Ms. Marchison.
Just a question, Terry Lyons. Would your right-of-way rights be impacted in the same way by the as-of-right design?
Two-way, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I would love to be able to reach an agreement if we could, but we've been unable to do that. And we cannot have the right-of-way eliminated as is being proposed by this project, nor can we have it overburdened by a multimodal way that sends every piece of traffic down a right-of-way that's not equipped for that kind of vehicle traffic.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else to speak in opposition?
Good evening. I'm Marcy Vaughn. I live at 407 Hanover. And my house is the orange house that's at the corner of Hanover and Rock. So we are directly across the street from what would be the row house. And I'd like to start by saying this is a little bit of a Hobson's choice here, bargaining against myself, because as some of my neighbors have stated, this zoning is improper for our neighborhood. But I do want to acknowledge that Mr. Wilson has made great strides in trying to make it a little bit more palatable to those of us who live here. But I guess I want to really stress that I don't want to object to these variances. But at the moment, I just don't have enough information to ascertain whether they will impact me negatively. The burden is on the proponent to establish that the value of my property won't be diminished. I'm not convinced of that. I don't know, will it lessen or increase the traffic? I don't know. I really don't, because the increased residential density is quite dramatic when you live 20 feet across the street. My house is actually on the corner in between Sudbury, Hanover, and Rock. All of those streets, if you've ever driven in that neighborhood, you will know those are not streets that are amenable to a lot of traffic. And when there's a lot of residents living there, there will be a lot of traffic. Maybe it would be even more traffic than commercial. I just don't know. I don't know whether those buildings will provide me with adequate light, with adequate air, with privacy. I don't know whether the increased residential use will overcrowd the area. No idea. Again, I do appreciate the effort on the aesthetics, but what it really comes down to is I don't see that we have enough information for that burden to be met. I would deeply appreciate it if Mr. Wilson would withdraw this petition tonight so that we can learn more about this proposal and, in fact, perhaps support it if that's appropriate. And I will add that literal enforcement of this zoning ordinance, is it reasonable to allow the use of a city slow street for this volume of traffic? We can't say unless we know what the volume of traffic is. I understand that there has been a traffic study. I think that Mr. Wilson referred to that, but I certainly haven't seen it. It's not available to the public. And I did just hear Attorney Lyons talking about some concerns with respect to the parking lot. There are other concerns as well. In May, I raised to the planning board, to the planning department, to the city attorney, the existence of a burial ground in that parking lot. I've been urging everybody at the city to take steps to ensure that excavation would comply with RSA 289.3. It wasn't until today that I learned from the city that some steps will be taken. That only occurred because I found somebody after working the phones with more influence in City Hall than I have to make a phone call, which immediately resulted in a phone call to me saying that the city will look into whether this excavation will violate state law. I simply don't see how this can proceed if we don't know what the actual contours of the buildable area are. And then I'll just end by saying that, I noticed typographical errors in this submission. I noticed a lack of clarity. I noticed contradictions. And to me, this isn't my area of the law, but those create enforcement problems. They create the risk of litigation. They create the risk of disagreements on interpretation. So I think it would be a great risk for this board to grant or deny these variances at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in opposition?
Juliana Echarri, 34 Rock Street. Most of my concerns have been said by my neighbors, but I just want to reinstate traffic through our streets with the amount of apartments that are being proposed would be too much. The zoning is for CD5, I understand it's for downtown, but if they had made the entrance to the development through Foundry, which is a bigger street than our street, then we would be more inclined to accept these variances and be more agreeable to this CUP plan. But unfortunately, what they did is basically screw us with this traffic instead of taking into consideration our streets and the noise pollution and the contamination, that the amount of traffic that would create with this plan. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else to speak to, for, or against? To, for, or against? Okay, then the public hearing is closed. And what would we like to do? We could postpone. There's no loss to any. I'm going to ask Stephanie to tell us about postponing and how that works and how it affects our, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, the board, excuse me, the board does have the ability to postpone. I would request that if that is moved, you specifically state why, and if more information is required, what that information is. And then we would reopen the public hearing to postpone to a date, time, and certain.
A day certain, okay. All right. What would you like to do, board? Yes, Ms. Murchison.
I'm usually one of these that hates to postpone. I'm more of a let them hang kind of person, but I think in this case, it probably would be well worth it.
Christmas season.
I know, I'm feeling charitable. I think we're trying to work with our sister board, the planning board here. I think my view on this application is it's extremely complicated. The presentation tonight, I thought Attorney Bozen did a very good job, but the information that was presented to us in the packet was full of a lot of information that just simply did not help. For instance, we don't frankly care about the vested plan because that says to me, you can build without coming to us, and we don't really need to know about that. We just need to know about what the variances are that you are requesting. So I think that given the abutters' views that they may be in favor of this, if perhaps they had more information, I think I probably would think a postponement would be probably merited.
Anybody else?
I'll second that. It's a motion, right?
Well, I think that if we do.
I thought you made a motion.
No, because I just want to put that out there for conversation, and because I do want to take Stephanie's request of us seriously as to what we're looking for additional information from the applicant in an amendment to the petition.
Mr. Neese. I saw you first. Okay, Mr. Mantle.
Okay, I'll weigh in. Postponing is, I probably would support that. The application is incomplete, to say the least. That in itself would have gotten a no vote on Article 15, just because we don't have any rendering of the penthouse. But now, with an added legal issue on top of that, in my perspective, it precludes this board from making any decision, because there's an outstanding legal issue that any decision that we make will just compound it. Either way. So, at this point in time, I would support postponing this until we get a complete application.
Mr. Neese, did you have something to?
Yeah, I would probably support postponement. A few things that I would like to see is the elevation of Building A along Foundry Place. I would also like to see something we've seen in some other packages from other applicants that clearly delineates the heights so we know what we're looking at. I would like to see some clarity on the number of stories on Building D, as well as the story height table, which to me causes me confusion because the story heights as listed in the table don't seem to line up well with the drawings that we've seen. So that makes it a little unclear. I don't know if there has been a traffic study, but if there has been a traffic study, I think somebody referred to one. It would be nice to see it. Since there is some concern in the neighborhood about traffic and the relative traffic between commercial and residential, but I don't know if a study's been done.
No.
Those are some items that I'd be interested in. I don't know about the legal issue. I think we'd have to talk to our attorney about that.
Right. Does anybody want to make a, hello.
I'll make a
Motion?
further comment, and that is,
Okay.
with regard to the legal issue, we sometimes do get applications here where there's an abutter who has a claim for a legal issue, but I don't think that it would be practical for us to postpone until such matters are resolved, because we may be waiting years, the way our courts work. So I don't think that is really a proper consideration for this board. So that's one thing. I also think, I'll just say, since I was ready to second the motion that Ms. Marchison didn't make, I'll say.
Would you like to first the
Yeah,
motion?
I'll say why. No, I think it's not up to me to make the motion, but I think that in my opinion, the applicant has made a very good faith effort to be responsive to the needs of the neighborhood. I know it's going to have a big impact on the neighborhood. Any large-scale development that is able to be put there is going to impact the neighborhood. It's kind of unavoidable based on the way it's zoned. We don't have the option of being more restrictive than the zoning, really. We don't, that's not within our remit. Our remit is simply to allow or disallow variances from the zoning. And I think it's important this is based on some of the public comments that we received, to set that expectation. We can't just go back and say, well, it's inappropriately zoned, so you can't really build according to the zoning in terms of the types of roof that's allowed or things of that nature. It's not really we don't have the power to do that. But mostly because of what I really perceive as a good faith effort by the owner in terms of trying to make this all work. I'm in favor of postponing until we have the proper information rather than just denying.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mattson?
Yeah, I was just going to add, and I can also make the motion to postpone, but I just wanted to get my input on feedback for why we're postponing. So I guess I'll do that first and then make the motion.
Can I just add one
Yes.
point before we do that? In terms of the legal issue, I mean, Attorney McCourt will tell us, because he's the real attorney in the room, is that is not within our purview. And as Attorney Lyons says, that legal issue is present in the as-of-right application as well as the CUP variance application. So unless, I don't know if Attorney McCourt wants to correct me, but.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for not correcting me.
That's a good point. And I guess basically, I'm in favor of postponing, mainly because I could use some more information on the specific variances being asked for, especially the penthouse gross living area and the penthouse setback. An actual plan and elevation of that would be helpful. I understand why the as of right was provided, because I do think there was this good faith effort made, and one of the abutters, Peter Hapney, mentioned a lot of thoughts I had on essentially trying to fit in with the character more than the as of right plan. But to get more information in response to this postponement, instead of the as of right plan, it would specifically be related to the variances being asked for, such as the penthouse relief. And so I guess, with that, I would make the motion to postpone this application until our January meeting.
You need a.
Or time.
Yes, we need a second for this.
Second.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was going to ask.
You need to
okay,
reopen
go
the
ahead.
public hearing.
Yeah, so a couple things. Just if you want to amend your motion, we need to reopen the public hearing and state specifically what information is needed.
Yes, that's what I was saying.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I did it in the wrong order.
That's okay.
Okay.
You can make it all one, I think, if you want.
Yeah, but
one motion.
I have to reopen the hearing, or?
Phyllis, you do.
I do have
Yes,
to reopen the
there
hearing.
needs
I
to be a
didn't know
vote
that.
to suspend the rules to reopen the public hearing, and then a motion to postpone, and that details all of the requested information.
Okay.
Okay, so first I need a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Seconded?
Mostly,
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody. Okay. Now we will reopen the public hearing. I think I am not completely sure why we can have comment about whether or not to postpone. The applicant can.
The hearing needs to be reopened so that you can accept more information for the
okay.
next meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. We are open, if you would like to come in.
No, it's
No,
it's just
for the next meeting,
Oh.
Phyllis.
Yeah, but this allows us to make the motion.
So why, okay, I thought you said I had to reopen the public.
You
hearing.
do, yes.
At the next
But for-
meeting.
At the.
No, you
yes,
reopen
at
it
the-
now,
no, not
so
at
we
the
can.
next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have.
I'm sorry.
We're reopening the public hearing. We're not accepting more. comments.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
This is so clear and obvious.
No, you just said we needed to get more information, so I said,
Yes.
okay. All right, we do need a clearer list of what exactly we want to see.
Yeah.
So,
All right, so now I can make the motion to postpone this hearing until our January meeting. And the reason why I'm in favor of postponing it is because I would like to receive more information specifically related to the variances being asked for in this application regarding the penthouse, gross living area, and penthouse setback.
And for visual schematics of Building A?
Yeah, the plan and elevation information, yeah.
Traffic study.
And renderings.
Okay.
there's a motion on the floor. We can discuss if we would like him to accept amendments. Does the second have anything to add? Are you the second?
Was that a second?
Who seconded it?
Nobody seconded.
Yeah, that was just
I'll
my
second
motion,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just a complete application. I mean, they have been here, they have gone through the process, they are paid professionals. It should not be our job to tell them.
However,
So-
I do think we need some very specific information in order to postpone, and I think Mr. Neese did a pretty good job on some of that. So,
So do you want me to suggest them as a motion to amend?
yes, please.
Is that what you want?
Yes.
Okay. So, make a motion to amend, a motion for postponement to include the following items. To be brought back. Clear depiction of the heights of floors of all the buildings. You already covered the elevation in the drawing of Building A, right?
Yeah, I said elevations and plan of the, relating to the penthouse.
Clarity on the number of stories on all the buildings. If available, the traffic study that may or may not have been done, I don't know, if it's available. I think everything else I mentioned was covered by Jeff.
I accept those amendments.
May I make another
Yes.
addition? I would like to see, it was really brought out that we see this in and of itself, but we don't have a whole scale of it along the street. I would like to see what it's going to look next to that orange house. I would
Okay.
like to see how it's going to fit into its landscape.
Okay,
And I would like more information about the burial ground.
okay.
Do you accept
I accept
those?
those amendments, yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Is there further discussion?
Can I just ask Steph, is that clear enough to you, or do you, sitting there as the aide, think that you need more information?
Just to be painfully clear, I want to go through the list.
Yes, please.
And tell me what I'm missing.
Please.
So elevations of building A, height of all buildings, number of stories on building D, traffic study if it has been already been done, a streetscape, more info about the burial ground. Anything else?
Clarity on the height of the stories.
Parking stuff.
Anything else?
We said traffic study.
Traffic study if it's available.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 additional items.
All right. Is there any further discussion? So all those in favor of postponement to the January meeting with a request for these specific items? Ms. Record?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Neese? Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Margerson?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So you are postponed. Okay. Take a 5-minute break. Okay. We are going to take a 5-minute break, and we really do appreciate your patience. We'll be back very soon.
This is 1 minute.
in session. The meeting is on. Remember, B under old business has withdrawn, so we are on to, under old business has withdrawn, so we are in A in new business. The request of Patrick and Wendy Quinn, owners, for property located at 124 Melbourne Street, whereas relief is needed to construct dormers onto the existing structure, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow a 15-foot front yard where 30 is required. B, 20-foot secondary front yard where 30 is required. C, 7-foot left side yard where 10 is required. And 2, variance from section 10.321 to allow a non-conforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 233, Lot 55, and lies within the single residence business district. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Chris Mulligan. I am here on behalf of the applicants, Patrick and Wendy Quinn. Mr. Quinn is here with me. We have before you tonight a proposal wherein we need relief this evening to permit a vertical expansion over an existing non-conforming footprint on an existing dwelling. What we have is a home that was built in the 1890s where the primary and secondary front yard setbacks and the left side yard setbacks are non-conforming. We're proposing dormer additions that increases the nonconformity volumetrically, but we are not proposing to invade any further into the side yard or front or secondary front yard setbacks. We're maintaining the existing footprint as it is and simply moving upwards vertically. So no increase in the setback violations themselves other than this volumetric increase to the building. This is a very small corner lot. The home on it is a very small bungalow. As I stated, it dates back to the 1890s, according to city records. It's in need of significant upgrading. We are constrained by the very small size of this particular lot. There are building coverage limitations that we have to comply with and we're constrained by. The only place to go in terms of expanding the living space on this home is up, and that's what we're proposing to do. Again, we're not increasing the amount of the penetration into the setbacks, but we are going up vertically within those setbacks that are non-conforming. So that is the overview of the project. You have renderings that show how the dormers and elevations that show how the dormer additions will look to the public. I think it's a fairly straightforward application of the variance criteria for me. So just to get into that, granting the requested relief will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the ordinance, nor will it be contrary to the public interest. Here you have a project that will not change the essential character of the surrounding neighborhood. The surrounding neighborhood is entirely residential. This is an entirely residential change to an existing property. Health, safety, and welfare of the public will not be negatively impacted in any way. This will result in a larger, more livable, and more code-compliant home within the neighborhood, which will have a beneficial effect on health, safety, and welfare. Substantial justice will be done by granting the variances. Here you have to balance the loss to the applicant against any of the general public if you were to require strict conformance with the ordinance. Strict conformance with the ordinance is essentially impossible in this case due to the existing nonconformities, the existing setback nonconformities and the fact that it's such a small lot. Any effective improvement on this property that increases the living space, which is a very reasonable desire of a homeowner, especially for a home that's this small, is going to require the identical relief that we're requesting here. And if we were to do anything other than expand vertically, we would need even more relief. So this is, in my way of thinking, the least relief that we would need and that we would ask a board for. Values of surrounding properties will not be diminished by granting the variances. To the contrary, this will be a substantial upgrade and improvement to this particular property that will have the ripple effect on the neighboring properties. The special conditions of this property, which prevent it from being enjoyed under the strict terms of the zoning ordinance and constitute an unnecessary hardship. It's a very small corner lot. The front and side yard setbacks are already in violation. Even though as it exists, the front and secondary front yard setbacks are not compliant, the actual amount of property between the edge of pavement and the building structure is much closer to compliant. Now, I understand that the board cannot consider property that's within the public right-of-way as our own, but the effective front yards, both the secondary and the primary front yards, as they exist on the ground from the edge of the pavement to the corners of the structure, is significantly larger than what is actually on the property that my client owns. So those are special conditions of this property that distinguish it from others in the neighborhood, such that there's no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the setback requirements and their application to this particular property. It's a reasonable use, it's a residential use in a residential zone, and it's just an improvement and an expansion of the existing use that's there. So I think it checks all the boxes necessary for this board to grant the variances that we've requested, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there questions for the applicant? Mr. Russell?
Just to clarify, the intention is to add the dormers, but the structure itself will remain intact, or is it going to be, it's not going to be knocked down?
No, not at all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. Oh, yes, Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So looking at your diagram on page 87 of our packet shows the proposed dormers that you're calling them, but really they are actually increasing. I just want to make sure I understand this. They're increasing the height of the overall building by about 1.5 feet.
I believe and as I think you might recall from last month, the way the city defines building height is something that sometimes escapes me. I believe, depending on the pitch of the dormered roofs that we're proposing, you would not necessarily go to the peak. You may actually drop down to the midline between the peak and the eave.
Yeah.
But either way, we're well below the 35 foot. But yes, there will be an increase in height. And whether or not it's 1.5 feet, I thought it was closer to 7 inches, but
I'm just reading that it says dormer ridge 1 foot 6 inches above existing ridge, which looking at all the existing photos, the ridge sort of carries through for the length of the building. So I guess you can call these dormers, but really we're adding a second story to this.
That's
basically 1.5 story-ish.
That's fair.
1890s structure. So a lot of your explanation, and I bought in well to some of your discussion about the being a corner lot, the, field that you actually have relative to where the paved roads are for the 30-foot setbacks. I guess I didn't see much in your discussion about the 10-foot setback side, which is where you're really at 7 feet. You're encroaching by 3 feet. And then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but your clients were before this board back in July to get permission to construct a home on the next lot over.
That's correct.
So this is, on the side that is now closer to something this board made accommodation to your clients to allow them to build a home there. What's your thoughts on the, the reasoning for allowing this dormer, this really extension, to get that close to the property line? Or was there any consideration to an alternate design that would have kept it out of that particular side setback?
Yeah, there really isn't any alternate design that can keep it out of that side yard setback. I mean, the only thing that you could do, and I've got the plans that you're alluding to. I'm going to hand these around in a second and we can look at them. I mean, if we eliminated one side of that addition, now you'd have this, sort of vernacular bungalow that's got a lopsided dormer on one side. I mean, I think just it doesn't work programmatically with my client's needs and his floor plans necessarily. But I just think it doesn't. It's going to be a really funny looking building, and I just don't see any huge benefit. But if I may approach. I don't think I have enough for everyone. What I've just handed around is the site plan from the earlier project, and again, I apologize, I didn't bring enough for everyone, but what we proposed to do and what you approved in that plan was a structure that was shifted as far over to the left in the available building envelope on that next site. So the effect of that is that the actual separation between the two buildings is something on the lines of 25 feet. So again, it's not, it does, and I'm not suggesting it complies at all with the setbacks, but the purpose of the setbacks, again, is to assure that there's adequate light, air, access, emergency ability for access, et cetera. And what we have between these two buildings on these two very small lots in a very cramped neighborhood in Portsmouth is 25 feet of separation between the buildings. That's, again, it's not, it does not comply with the setbacks on this lot, but it complies with the purpose of the setbacks, and that is to promote the, to assure that you have adequate light, air, and separation of properties. So for that reason, I think it's.
One more question, if I may. Appreciate this. I guess just the one follow-up question, it does say proposed residential footprint. Obviously, things can change, but where would you say your client is at in the course of design and execution of this? Is this pretty solid at this point in time?
Yeah, and I mean, that was what was approved, advertised and approved by this board, and it's a representation to the, that is a condition of approval. So, it's not going to change.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak to, for, or against? Public hearing is closed.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the application as presented and advertised.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mintz.
So, the basic situation here is that there is let's call it at least an antique, maybe historic structure already within these setbacks exactly as they are being requested for variance. So the whole reason behind the variance is just the location of the existing structure, which has been there a really long time and obviously can't be moved. So adding a second story is a reasonable thing to do, and it affects all of the variance criteria. It wouldn't be contrary to the public interest, and it would observe the spirit of the ordinance as I buy into the argument that is not creating a light and space difficulty of any substantial consideration, and therefore that criterion is satisfied. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. There's really no loss to the public by adding the dormers or second story, whatever you want to call it. It has no impact on the surrounding neighborhood, and therefore any loss to the applicant would be unjust. Granting the variance would not diminish the values of surrounding properties. It's an improvement to the house that's there, gives it a little bit more square footage to work with, and will increase the value of it. And it's always good for the surrounding properties as the value of one property goes up. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship. Again, I think the unique aspect of this property is that it has, that the specific variance is related to adding height above an existing structure. There is no change at all to the setbacks as a result of granting these variances. And so literally enforcing this, the code would prevent the expansion of the house in the most reasonable way. And I would note that we are often chagrined on this board when we see older homes that represent the character that we've come to like within our neighborhoods in Portsmouth, torn down for brand new construction. This is an opportunity that the applicant is taking advantage of to keep a historic and characteristically consistent structure in the neighborhood by doing an intelligent addition to it. So therefore, it satisfies this criterion as well. That is the sum total of my motion.
Thank you. Does the second have anything to add?
I'll just add, in addition to the location of the property, or the structure on the property, it's also a very small property. It's about a third of the size of what would be required. So it's a very small buildable envelope. And so if they weren't asking for this variance, they would be asking for another variance if they wanted to build out laterally instead. So I think this is a less impactful relief being asked for.
Thank you. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'll be supporting the motion. I do think one thing that was not mentioned is the fact that this is a corner lot, and these corner lots do get penalized with having two front setbacks, and in many of our zone areas, the front setback is substantially greater than that of a side setback. So if this was not on a corner lot, especially that 30 feet from the secondary front yard would not be an impediment to the applicant in much of what they're proposing. So I think that's an important point that helps convince me that it's acceptable.
Yep. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, so a yes vote allows the dormers. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Ms. Marchison?
Yes.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Okay. Our next item of business is the request of Kent and Jennifer Bonnewell, owners, for property located at 332 Hanover Street. Whereas relief is needed to demolish the existing primary and accessory structure and construct a 2 living unit structure which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.5A41.10A to allow A, 2,167 square foot of lot area per dwelling unit where 3,000 feet is required. B, a secondary front yard of 17 feet where 12 feet is the maximum. And C, a finished floor surface 6.5 feet above the sidewalk grade where 36 inches is maximum. Said property is located on Assessor Map 126, Lot 43, and lies within the Character District 4L1. Is there anyone to speak to this?
Madam Chair?
Yeah. Point of order.
Yes. Yes, please.
Fisher v. Dover.
Fisher v. Dover.
Yes. Tell me what you would like to do about that.
Okay. Well, I was thinking the board should at least have a discussion on it.
Okay,
Okay.
discuss.
All right, I guess I can start. I'm really struggling with the Fisher v. Dover requirement for this particular application. As the other board members may recall, I was actually in favor of the original application. I had voted to allow it to occur. However, the decision of the board as a whole was to deny the application. I do understand the applicant is coming before us with some changes, primarily to the height of the structures. It's about a 3.5 foot difference, I think, in the height is what they're proposing. However, most of the other major factors of the property are largely unchanged. I know they're talking about, painting it differently so it looks kind of more like two properties, but if you look at the overall outline, it appears to be largely the same as what was previously allowed. Additionally, the height variance was never requested, and if you look at the actual variance criteria that is put forward, they're essentially identical. There is, a few inch difference in this, first floor surface height has been slightly modified, but it is the exact same criteria that this board denied in the prior application. And while, again, I thought that the original was good, I also recognize the finality of the board's decision-making, and that this is not the Historic District Commission. You don't have like an initial meeting where you get comments, you go back and you rework your proposal and come back. I appreciate that the applicant has worked hard to, now try and seem to get many of the neighbors on board, and that's great, but again, this particular board, we have a certain finality with our decision-making, and I just don't see where, especially in lieu of the criteria and relief that's being asked for, where we have something that's sufficiently different to say that Fisher v. Dover does not apply.
Anybody else? Mr. Neese?
On the other hand, I also, I'm trying to remember how this vote went, but I also voted actually in favor of the original proposal. I think our motion was to deny, and I voted against the motion to deny. Looking at the letter, oh shoot, I just lost it. Looking at the letter of decision form, our reason for denial was primarily because we didn't think the structure was consistent with the character-based zoning, and that it wasn't compatible with the district and the other surroundings, and for preservation and enhancement of the area. There have been a change in the height. There have been some changes to the facade, I believe, on the front. Excuse me. And these appear to have convinced at least some of the neighbors that there have been changes made that make it more consistent with the character of the neighborhood. I'm not, without weighing whether or not I agree with it till we've had the discussion, I think that there have been enough changes that Fisher v. Dover may not apply in this instance, and we should at least hear the application and then make a decision on whether the variances are needed or not.
Yes.
So I agree with Mr. Rayom. I would evoke Fisher v. Dover. With all due respect to Mr. Neese, the height was not a variance request. The removal of the windows played no part in my decision. And with all due respect to the abutters, not everything they said I thought was relevant. I find that there was literally no change between this application and the one that we denied, and I would move that we evoke Fisher v. Dover.
Anybody else? Okay, I agree with Mr. Neese, because while there is not a lot of difference between the two structures, there's a huge difference in the way people feel about the building, and I think that is relevant, that to them this speaks differently about what's going on this lot. And if it speaks differently, it must have some significant difference. So I would be willing to to hear this again for that reason.
Madam Chair, if I could have an opportunity to address it as well.
No, we're not.
No.
It's our decision.
It's our decision.
Yeah.
I believe
Well, we have had people address this.
The board has the ability to request the representative for the applicant to speak to the Fisher versus Dover question, but it is up to the board if they want to hear that or not.
Well, I'd like to hear more from
I'd
the
like
board
to hear,
members.
let us discuss. Mr. Van, were you going to speak again? No, I'm sorry. Anybody?
I know it's in here someplace. Could somebody remind me what the vote was last time? It was
4-3.
4-3. It was very close, right?
It was.
So, I mean, part of my thinking, I don't even know if this is really a legitimate way to think about it, is that in a closely balanced vote, the changes don't have to be that large to work around Fisher v. Dover. I think if it was a close decision, we're not necessarily looking for a completely different proposal.
Anybody else?
Nothing.
I was just going to say, I mean, I do see the similarities, but to me, this, particularly the perception of this project is that it's quite different by the abutters and the applicant themselves, so.
I'll just say that the criteria is that it's, the application is not for a use that materially differs in nature and degree from its predecessor. And again, with all due respect to the abutters, their perceptions of their view of it changing do not factor into Fisher v. Dover. The closeness of our decision-making on an application does not factor into Fisher v. Dover. It's whether or not the application is substantially the same. I think it's almost identical. And we have to have finality in our proceedings, and I would evoke Fisher v. Dover.
Yes.
I'll just add a little bit more to that. I mean, again, one of the major factors here that they're asking for is the lot area per dwelling unit, which, there was a lot of discussion about that, representing some intensification because of the nature of the largeness of what's being proposed here. And then, in essence, to get the 2 units, you're going to have a fairly large structure. And I just think that was, from what I recall of the discussion amongst the board members who ultimately prevailed in the decision, those were some significant concerns of those board members. And I just am concerned about us revisiting things that we have put in the done pile. Now, whether we should have given an opportunity for this dialogue, it's another question, but the board seemed quite adamant and resolute in their decision-making with regards to what they were seeing. And I'm just personally not seeing enough difference there based off of, again, as the vice chair has noted, the criteria that the legal system has given us through the Fisher v. Dover case law to go and judge these types of situations by.
Okay. We will give you an opportunity to speak.
Madam Chair, I think that should be
that would be a
I'm
vote.
sorry. I thought we decided after we had spoken.
I don't recall that decision
Okay.
being made.
That's what we said. Okay, go ahead. Would anyone like to make a motion one way or the other to allow the applicant to address this?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor to allow the applicant to speak in reference to Fisher v. Dover. Mr. Neese?
No.
Mr. Mantle?
No.
Mr. Margison? Oh, Ms. Margison. I'm not really angry.
Vice Chair. No.
VC.
Mr. Ray?
No.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes also, but it is denied. So now we have to decide.
That closes it, right? I
Well,
mean,
you have to vote on.
No, we have to vote.
We have to
didn't
vote
vote
on
on
the-
Fisher v. Dover yet,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, we have to vote on the Fisher v. Dover. I saw Mr. Mel, yes.
looking at the application, I thought it was, especially with the letters attached, I think they took the last presentation to heart, made design changes, obviously have gotten a lot more neighborhood support. But in listening to Mr. Rayon and Ms. Margison, they're correct. The application's barely changed. Now, we're going to be looking at the exact same thing. Now, it may have different shingles, different this, different that, but the application hasn't changed that much at all. And I believe Fisher is appropriate.
Okay. So,
I'll second the
You'll
motion
second
to
it, okay, I'm
revoke
waiting.
Fisher v. Dover, and that the application is not for a use that materially differs in nature and degree from its predecessor, which we just heard in October.
I'm sorry, was that a motion, or that was a second to Mr. Michael?
Second to Mr.
Oh.
Yeah.
He wasn't quite
I
sure
made the
he
motion.
made
No,
a
I made a
motion.
motion. That's okay. Yeah.
Glad I'm not the only one.
So that was a motion.
That Fisher v. Dover applies.
Okay.
And Ms. Margison seconded it. Discussion?
Well, I was one of the people who voted against this. I may have even made the motion against it. I can't remember from the last meeting. But my rationale for that was the lot size per unit. So that hasn't changed. So I guess I've been convinced that there hasn't been a substantive change in the application.
I guess I still feel mixed about this because the public interest has changed and the way the neighborhood feels about it has changed quite markedly. And I think that makes a difference in how we have to see it, although I absolutely know that there has been barely a change in the structure, but for whatever reason, it has evoked a different neighborhood spirit for the ordinance. So I will not be voting in favor of the ordinance. Yes.
Okay. Well,
Just call the question.
Yep, but I'm calling on, your hand was raised.
yeah, go with David. I'll reserve my comment.
I was just going to say very briefly, I was trying to remind the board that, the business before the board is not the result of a neighborhood vote. If it was, we would just dissolve the board and simply ask the neighbors to vote until we get the solution. That's not how the board works. We have criteria, we look at applications, we take in many different things. The feelings and opinions of neighboring property owners is certainly one of those things that we consider. That said, that's not one of the criteria is how does the neighborhood feel about it? And in that sense, I just think that we just need to be cautious about the finality of our decision making.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, a yes vote denies, or puts Fisher into play. Okay. Mr. Neese,
No.
Mr. Mannell,
A yes vote invokes Fisher v.
a
Dover.
yes vote invokes.
Yes.
Ms. Margison,
Yes.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Rossi,
Yes.
Mr. Mattson.
No.
No. Okay, well, Fisher is in play.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next item of business, item C. The request of Walter and Tamara, and I don't know if it's Tamara or Tamara, Tate, owners for property located at 108 Burkett Street, whereas relief is needed to construct an addition above the existing enclosed porch and replace a mechanical unit, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.515.14 to install a mechanical unit 1 foot from the side property line, where 10 feet is required. 2, variance from section 10.515.14 to install a mechanical unit 1 foot from the property the side property line, where 10 feet is required. And 3, A variance from section 10.321 to allow a non-conforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 159, Lot 30, and lies within the General Residence A District. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. It's Tamara.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
My name is Tamara Tate, and I'm here with my husband Walter. So good evening, Madam Chair,
Hello.
members of the board. Thank you. Also, thank you, Stephanie. We've talked with you many times for helping us along this new process. I'm going to go ahead and read the narrative, our project narrative, if that's okay. So basically, we are looking to expand vertically within our current footprint. The additional space would be on top of the existing winterized enclosed porch on the first floor level located in the rear of the house. The current winterized porch dimensions are 18 feet by 10 feet. The proposed additional space on the second floor will create a master bedroom on the second floor with a master bath and closet space. Unfortunately, the current master bedroom is located in a third floor attic area. And given that we'll be there for a long time, we prefer to have it on the second floor. Currently, the bedroom on the second floor is about 10 feet by 12 feet and only has a closet that's 18 inches deep by 5 feet wide. The first floor of the winterized porch will be reconstructed into a kitchen that opens to the living and dining areas and will be able to accommodate our family of 4. The proposed renovation will make the winterized porch ceiling height match the rest of the first floor height of 8.5 feet. In order to maximize interior wall and floor space, we are also proposing to remove the existing baseboard heaters and mini split heads. Also, we're proposing to replace the existing mini split condenser with a central air condenser in the same exterior location. Going forward, so for the variance relief, our home is non-conforming. It was built in the 1900s and is built within the 10-foot minimum side setbacks on the right west side of the lot. With the proposed improvements, the new minimum setback would also be within the 10-foot minimum side setback on the second level. We are applying for variance relief from section 10.321 and 10.521 zoning ordinance. 10.321, expansion of non-conforming structure to permit addition of a second story within the pre-existing non-conforming right side setback. 10.521, the right side setback, to the extent relief beyond 10.321 is deemed necessary, we request a right side setback relief to allow for the second level addition within the setback where 10 foot is required. Currently, the winterized porch encroaches 5 feet 7 inches into the setback. The proposed second floor addition would also encroach 5 feet 7 inches into the setback. 10.521 right side setback, to the extent relief beyond 10.321 is deemed necessary, we request a right side setback relief to allow for replacing the mini split condenser and pad with a central air condenser and pad in the same location. Currently, the mini split condenser and pad encroaches 9 foot into the setback, and the proposed central air condenser and pad will also encroach 9 feet into the setback. Unless there's questions, I'll go through the criteria.
Go
Okay.
ahead. No, you have a question? Okay, yes.
Thank you. Looking at the site plan drawing, there's a note that I think maybe left over from something before, where it says size of the garage after new garage. Is that, the new garage is already there, isn't it?
There is a new garage that was built by the prior owners, yes.
Okay. And the next question, did you consider any other locations for the air conditioner? Since you're removing the existing mini split, I think that's what it is, on that side, did you consider, for example, putting the air conditioner on the other side of the house where it would comply with a setback but would be nearer the driveway?
No, we basically thought leaving it in the same spot where the electrics are currently tied to that area. No. we thought that would be the best spot for it since the condenser's already in that spot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Continue.
Okay, so regarding the variance criteria, 10.233.21, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. The new 18-foot by 10-foot second-level addition is intended to stay within the beautiful character of the neighborhood. Many houses on Burkett and in the surrounding neighborhood have additions in the rear of the house. The proposed improvements will have limited sightlines from the street and will be restricted to 2 stories high. There is no threat to public health, safety, or welfare. 10.233.22, the spirit of the ordinance will be observed. The GRA district provides areas for single-family, 2-family, and multifamily dwellings with appropriate accessory uses at moderate to high densities, ranging from approximately 5 to 12 dwelling units per acre, together with appropriate accessory uses and limited services. Our property, although non-conforming, will still be within the range set forth by the ordinance. Our property, like many in the neighborhood, contains a home which does not comply with all setback requirements. Our proposed plan does not increase encroachment into any of the setbacks over existing conditions. Front, rear, and left side setbacks are remaining the same, as are the height and the open space requirements. As such, granting the requested variances will not conflict with the basic zoning objectives. The proposal allows for an updated, more livable residence consistent with other nearby homes. Thus, granting the variances neither alters the essential character of the locality nor threatens the public health, safety, or welfare. 10.233.23, substantial justice will be done. The requested relief is reasonable given our current structure and lot lines. The proposal is quite modest, retaining the existing use while improving aesthetics and livability while complying with the open space. Access to air and light is maintained, so there's no harm to the public in granting the variance. If the application were denied, the comfort of our home would be diminished given our family of 4. Also, we would be greatly harmed by denial of the variance because we will be unable to create additional living space or reasonably renovate our residence. There would be no gain to the public by denying the requested zoning relief. Substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. 10.233.24, the values of surrounding properties will not be diminished. The proposal adds interior living space and improves aesthetics while conforming with the architectural character of the surrounding area. The proposed improvements will be visually appealing internally and externally and increase the property values. Our neighbors will all benefit from these improvements. And 10.233.25, little enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in any unnecessary hardship. The current home does not allow enough space for a master bedroom with closet space on the second level. Also, the stairs to the current master bedroom located on the 3rd floor are kind of awkward, making getting there careful. Somewhat difficult process. The proposed improvements will add much needed usable indoor space and allow a master bedroom that's easier and safer to get to on the second level. Economically, the proposed improvements of the house are the most cost effective. We have space to add a master bedroom where our current deck resides, but the costs are not feasible and we would lose outdoor space. We do have available setbacks on the rear of the house where the deck is, but building in that area would also require demolition of the deck and relocation of the bulkhead and basement stairs. Additional foundation work and draining would be necessary to build in the current setbacks, leading to a disruption to our living space and significant expenses out of scope for this project. The cost of the proposed improvements are far more economical than our other options.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions?
I did want to add one, if I could speak for
If you
I did want to address your question about the condenser for the mini split. We did think about on that side, we have our driveway there, and if we were to put I did talk to somebody about having the condenser by the area there, but the bulkhead is there, and then we also have a staircase over there, and then there's a window
right there to the basement too, which I believe is, you have to have a certain distance between the windows. It'd be kind of awkward on that side. We just thought the other side, all the mechanicals are on the other side of the house. And it would just make more sense to have kind of everything in that area.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Okay. The public hearing is closed. Mr. Neese.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant the variances requested for the application as presented and advertised.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rand.
Thank you. I'll work through the criteria. Taking the first two criteria, whether it's contrary to the public interest and spirit of the ordinance in combination, there's no evidence that this will alter the essential characteristics of the neighborhood. This is a residential area. It'll stay a residential area. There's no effect on health, safety, and welfare, and there will be no effect on light and air of any of the neighbors. The one issue that was raised that I raised was this issue of the location of the condensers. I think it's a condition that's in the same place as the current mechanicals, which has not apparently caused any problem because we got no objection from it. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. There's no benefit to the public by denying this variance. On the other hand, the loss to the applicant if the variance is denied is substantial. Lose considerable utility of the house, which is a small, undersized, old house that is somewhat, apparently from the layout, is somewhat difficult to use the way they'd like to use it. So they would suffer a greater loss than any benefit to the public if it would be denied. Granting the variance will not diminish the values of surrounding properties. There's no evidence that this will have any impact. If anything, it may increase the value of surrounding properties. Moving on to literal enforcement would result in an unnecessary hardship. The property does have special conditions. It's an undersized lot for the zone. The existing structure is located, as in many of these homes, is located clearly on one side of the lot, so it puts it off center. The requested variances do not enlarge the footprint of the house at all. They are just adding on to it to make it more usable. These conditions, there's no clear relationship no fair and substantial relationship between the purposes of the ordinance and specific application to the properties, so there's no reason to deny the variance that I can see.
Thank you. Does the second have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just reinforce the actual size of the addition that's being proposed is very modest overall. I mean, its height is less than the third story. It's really just standing up to the top of the current existing second story. It matches the existing footprint on a very short length of the house. It's not like what we saw in a prior application where it's something that's being added over the whole length of the house. It's a relatively short length of the back. So the actual amount of encroachment from the addition standpoint into the setback is really pretty modest overall. And then in terms of the mechanical unit, the condenser, currently before the city council is plan to eliminate the paragraph 10516.40. So with the intent to allow these mechanical units to be pretty much placed anywhere on a lot. So with that almost becoming part of our ordinance, it just reflects, as this board has done on many occasions, accepting the locations of these. These types of units now are much quieter and less impactful to neighboring properties than they once were. So with that, I recommend approval.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Then I will call the vote. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Marchison?
Yes.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You're welcome. Thank you. Right now, we need a vote to go past 10 p.m. So if somebody would like to make that.
So motion to go past 10 p.m.
Second. Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, we can continue. So I have to go back where I was. The request of Catherine and Bryn Waldwick, owners, for property located at 30 Parker Street, whereas relief is needed to install 2 mechanical units, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.515.14 to install a mechanical unit with a 5-foot right side setback where 10 is required. And B, a 0.5-foot rear yard setback where 10 is required. And 2, variance from section 10.515.14 to install a mechanical unit with a 2-foot right side setback where 10 is required. And B, a 2-foot rear yard setback where 10 is required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 126, Lot 27, and lies within the General Residency District.
Good
Thank you
evening.
for waiting all evening.
That's all right. Yes, Ann Whitney, I'm the architect for the project. Sounds like I may not be coming back for many more of these heat pump
Yeah.
requests. In this case, actually, if you go to the last page, that's the survey plan. Well, actually, that's a good one, too. I wanted to show the tax map to show kind of how the buildings are oriented on that property. And actually where you're, yeah, there you go. We've got a building right on the property line on the south side, the driveway's on the right-hand side, and then the rear, there's a tiny little yard, and then there's a funny little jog in the rear, which, if we go to my drawing now, we're trying to figure out a best place to put these heat pumps. And we have a shed and porch passage that was approved months ago. I was hoping to be able to put it in front of that little bump out, but we have an access to a crawl space there. So basically, I'm locating it. Well, the other thing I wanted to talk about is the fencing doesn't follow the property line when we had, and the fencing that's existing doesn't follow the property line when we had the survey done. And my client discussed with 12631 if they wanted to, resurvey theirs, and, we just decided we're going to leave the fencing as it is. So that's why the setbacks are, that one heat pump is sort of sitting out in the yard for the future when that fence does get changed. So basically, we're trying to tuck them into a place where they aren't visible to the public and they're the furthest away from all these other abutters in terms of, the triangle from one to the other. That this seemed like the best place to put that without compromising the one little bit of rear yard that they have. And just had pictures of the units. And I think that was it. I'll go over the criteria. Variance not contrary to the public interest. The many properties in this neighborhood are non-conforming to building area and setback. Heat pumps are located to provide the best separation from abutting buildings and to maintain the small rear yard. The variances are consistent with the spirit of the ordinance and will allow this variance with minimal impact without adversely affecting the abutters in the neighborhood. Substantial justice will be done as the variance will allow, again, this best location from both the neighborhood and the owner's perspective. Variances will not diminish the value of surrounding properties, and the special condition of this property is the nonconforming of the existing residence to front, rear, and left side setbacks, and the irregular shape of the rear property line. Any questions?
Are there questions? Okay, thank you. All right, I'll open the public hearing. Does one need to do this? Is there anyone to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to this petition? Is there anyone to speak to, for, or against? Okay. The public hearing is closed. Anybody?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance request as presented.
Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. News.
Okay. So I'll take the first two criteria together. The variance is not contrary to the public interest, and the spirit of the ordinance is observed. Again, these heat pump condensers are really a modest imposition. They're quite quiet and very barely noticeable. And pretty soon our ordinance will just allow them. Presumably, yes. And the location, proposed location of these heat pumps is the most reasonable on the property. Substantial justice is done. Granted, these variances will benefit the property owner without any detriment to the general public or other individuals. The values of surrounding properties are not diminished. This property is being improved, so there's no reason to think that it would diminish the surrounding property values. And then finally, literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Because of the special additions of this property are due to its irregular lot shape, and it is also slightly undersized in an already one of the smallest allowable lot sized zones. And adding these mechanical units is a reasonable one, and there is no fair and substantial justice between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to this property here with proposing these mechanical condensers within the yard setbacks in the fenced-in rear yard area.
Does the second have anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Ben, any discussion?
I would just like to comment that I think is unwise of us to consider potential changes in the zoning ordinance when voting on a matter that is before us under the current zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Noted.
Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Ms. Marchison?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. You're all set. Thank you. And our next petition. The request of Chris G. and Lisa Alexandropoulos, owners, for property located at 3168 Lafayette Road. Whereas relief is needed to establish a tattoo studio, which requires the following. 1. A variance from section 10.440, use number 7.20, to allow a personal service use where it is not allowed. Said property is located on Assessor Map 292, Lot 150, and lies within the Single Residence B District. Is there anyone to speak to this petition?
All right.
Hello.
Good evening.
Yes, thanks for your patience.
Yes, of course. I am quite obviously the girl who wants to open the tattoo studio in Portsmouth. My name is Sonia McMillan. I am trying to purchase the property from Lisa and Chris, who have been nothing but supportive, and I have to say thank you first and foremost to Stephanie, who has been amazing with all of my questions. I've obviously never done anything like this before, so thank you all for being here tonight and staying late for me. I really appreciate it. First and foremost, I just want to say that I am a small business owner. I'm currently working out of Durham. I own Scarlet Rose Studio. It's a clean, welcoming tattoo studio and was just voted the 2024 runner-up in Best Tattoo Shop in a People's Choice Award, the best in Seacoast, which is a huge feat for us because we've only been open for 2 years. And quite honestly, I didn't even know we were nominated. So it was really great to kind of get a phone call and just be like, hey, you won this. I'm like, won what? But I've worked really hard to build a reputation of warmth and kindness since I began my tattooing journey in Newmarket. I opened my own business, and I think it's a testament to my professionalism and commitment to my clients' autonomy, health, and safety. These are qualities of small businesses that I'm hoping to bring to the Portsmouth community. I'm looking to expand my business and become the property owner of this place. It's located at 3168 Lafayette Road, and it's a perfect little storefront I've been looking for, and I'm here to plead my case for you to allow this current commercial space to continue to remain commercial. As per Article 2, Section 10.22320, the dwelling is already used for a small business, so the only change to the public is a change in what small business will be operated out of the location. Approval of the use variance will only serve public interest. I believe my business will not only be in the public interest, but will hopefully pique public interest and even draw some business from surrounding areas. My clients come as far as Connecticut to get tattooed but from me. In the public interest in tattooing and body art in general has only seen uphill climb since the stigma has been diminished. I believe in addition of the studio to this area will increase the value in the surrounding areas as well as draw public interest to the world of body art. As for the spirit of the ordinance, 10.22322, the spirit of the ordinance will be observed. Tattooing not only promotes health, but encourages positive self-body image and freedom of self-expression. The positive influence of tattooing has increased tenfold as we grow as a community and embrace people of all shapes and sizes. The negative connotation of tattooing has decreased tremendously as people are letting go of the stigma and discrimination of the past. We are seeing more and more people getting memorial tattoos to work through their grief, or even covering self-harm scars with tattoos as a way to cover up past trauma and move on with a positive body self-image. As per 10.212, the spirit of the ordinance will most definitely be enhancing the visual environments. Art is quite literally what I do. I definitely plan on cleaning up the building, and it will be more visually pleasing and add value to the property and to the surrounding area. 10.23323, substantial justice will be done. I have read, interpreted, and provided justification to the city's zoning ordinance to the best of my ability. I am not very well versed in it until just this week. Furthermore, I have had multiple conversations with members of the city's planning board. I'm trying my best to navigate both the ordinance and the process. Substantial justice in this case would be that the building would continue to be allowed to be a commercial space. It's completely unfeasible for it to be residential. It's 642 square feet. There's no kitchen. There's no shower. It would be quite an undertaking for anyone else that buys a property to turn it into something that would be usable space for living. And not only that, but it abuts Lafayette Road pretty directly. It's a huge commercial street. It's been a commercial space for over 20 years, even though the zoning has since changed since the property was purchased. It's a non-conforming building for an SBR family to use. It would be completely unfair to put a family here with the building have none of those aforementioned things. 10.23324, the values of surrounding properties will not be diminished. The addition of a tattoo studio would be no hazard to my surrounding neighbors. We're a single use for everything we do. Tattooing has become very well regulated and safe. There'll be no detriment to the surrounding property values either. As I had just stated, I do plan on cleaning up the building. She tends to have a lot of like headstone stuff out there. I'm going to be cleaning up the front, maybe putting in some shutters and, just making it look a little bit more visually pleasing. The increase in traffic is highly unlikely as I only see 1 or 2 clients per day. My typical workday is just one-on-one with one client or maybe 2 for up to 8 hours a day. There'll be no excess of water, sewer, or runoff. 10.23325, denying the variance would result in an undue hardship as this property is in a unique area not suitable for family, but the perfect area for small business and a quiet one with a service that keeps hours of 11 to 5. Any other future commercial properties will also need to continue to apply for a variance in order to continue using this space for a business. Denying this now will create more work for any future owners as well as the town, and it will create future issues for the seller of the property. It's also an issue for people that would want to change it from the commercial space that it is now into a residential. I am certainly not what you envision when you think of a cliche biker shop. I'm truly quite the opposite, and I keep regular hours. I'm a quiet female-based business. My clientele are respectable and kind people. I do work on 90% females. I raise money for Planned Parenthood. I do giveaways, raffles. I even do mastectomy cover-ups for breast cancer survivors. I am a community leader. I donate yearly. And I have worked hard these past 5 years to create a safe and welcoming environment for those people, and they can exercise their freedom of expression without any judgment here. I love supporting people around me, and I hope that I can also sell local artisan work in my storefront and help sustain a small business in the area as well. I really want to do jewelry, local honey, just things from small business owners that are similar to me that I can offer to my clients that I see daily. The ask in this variance is really quite simple, and it's to little of no consequence to the town. I do not plan on doing any major construction, renovations, or changes to the external building or the land itself. I'm just asking to continue to allow the 600 square foot commercial space to remain just that, commercial. I look forward to bringing my business to the small town of Portsmouth, and I'm excited to get to know a new community.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you mentioned the different type of memorials. I know you talked about your body art being a potential memorial, but was that was the most recent use?
It's Seacoast Memorials right now, so it's a headstone engraving site.
All right, so that is the most recent use of the property as a business. And then my second question is really for staff. I know there was some discussion in the staff memo regarding the parking layout. Now, admittedly,
Yes, I wanted to mention it was non-conforming. Sorry.
I'm good, yeah. So just for staff, you talked about the parking layout, recognizing that, yes, a couple of the spots require you to transit over each other, but the requirement is only for 2 parking spots, correct?
Correct.
I mean, I think it's pretty amply obvious that the applicant has at least 2 spots here. What was the concern that you were indicating in your recommendation for a stipulation?
Yeah, so just to give context of the whole conversation that I had with Sonia, so I had asked her to provide parking spaces and parking count for my staff memo according to the dimensions outlined in the zoning ordinance. She complied. She sent me this parking layout that was in your packet. The issue is the 3 stacked spaces, which our ordinance does not allow. So I just wanted to make sure that what the board is approving is the use, not the layout of the parking. Legally, per the zoning, it's these 4 spaces up front that are conforming and usable per our zoning ordinance.
Right. I mean, certainly if the applicant wished to use those additional spaces for their own personal parking or something, that would be potentially acceptable. But
right.
But the requirement is 2 spaces. They've demonstrated a good chance that there's 4 fully legal spots and then a couple of additional, perhaps.
Yeah, which
not legal for business purposes spots.
Correct. What she chooses to do with 6 and 5 are her business, and it's just the 1 through 4 that meet our regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? Oh, yes, Mr. East.
I think you answered this question, but just to confirm, do you ever envision night hours beyond 5 p.m.?
Sorry, say that again?
Do you ever envision being opening past 5 p.m.?
Oh, no. No. My boyfriend gets up for work at 5 in the morning, and I like to be home for dinner, to be home with him. And quite honestly, I'm hoping on having kids pretty soon or in the near future, so I'd also like to be home with them in the future. We've already discussed kind of like I'll do the morning, he'll do the afternoon, and I'll be home for dinner kind of situation. I think right now our hours at my current studio are until 7, but it's very rare, unless I'm doing a very large project, that I would be there till 7 o'clock.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this application?
We have 1 Zoom member that would like to speak. Am I good to allow them?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Susan Mitchell, you can take yourself off mute.
Yes, this is actually Tony Mitchell, and we are speaking as dissenters. Is that okay? I guess I raised my hand a little too early.
That's fine.
Okay. So my name is Tony Mitchell. I live at 55 Ocean Road, and actually we submitted in a timely fashion a letter of dissent from 20 of our neighbors. Can I read that letter as a matter of record, or do you have it as a matter of record? How would you like me to proceed?
We did receive it.
Okay.
So the board did receive it. What you choose to do with your 5 minutes is up to you.
It's up to you, right.
Okay. Well, let me do this then. Let me read the letter, and then let me address the 5 criteria of the variance as we see it, and I can answer any questions, and I can certainly do that within 5 minutes, and thank you for the opportunity. So we, the undersigned Portsmouth residents from Bartlett Green Condominium Association, regarding at 55 Ocean Road, are writing to formally oppose the variance to allow a tattoo studio at 3168 Lafayette Road. As residents of this community, we are deeply concerned about the potential negative impact this variance could have on the character, safety, and overall quality of life in our neighborhood. Tattoo studios, while legitimate businesses in other parts of the city, when zoned appropriately, do not align with the SRB zoning intended to maintain the residential character of our neighborhood. Here are the key reasons we believe this variance should not be granted. Incompatibility with the residential character of our neighborhood, the presence of an adult-only business that may maintain late hours and draw in a transient crowd could be disruptive to the peaceful nature of our primarily residential neighborhood. Traffic safety and parking issues. The property has very little room for parking, and any overflow could impact our neighborhood as we are immediately adjacent. Additionally, being less than 300 feet south of the Ocean Road stoplight, vehicles are accelerating rapidly and could make entering and exiting the business challenging and unsafe. Defined zoning variance requests allowing commercial uses that are not directly aligned with the zoning district could gradually erode the residential nature of our neighborhood and surrounding communities. Decline in property values and approval of this variance could cause a substantial decline in residential property values. Studies show that certain types of businesses can negatively impact property values. We may see decreases in property values due to the change in the neighborhood's character that this approval would bring. Considering these concerns, we respectfully request that the Board of Adjustment deny the request to allow a tattoo studio at this address in the SRB zoned area. Preserving the integrity and character of our neighborhood is essential for the continued well-being of all residents, and we urge you to consider the long-term implications of this decision. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. We trust the board will consider these concerns as you make your determination. So I would just add, it's kind of as an orientation, we're an 18-unit condo development that was carved out of land that we believe was at one point Maple Haven. And we are on Lafayette Road, but we really orient ourselves to the neighborhood to the west of us, Maple Haven, that's behind us. And so we consider ourselves a pretty tight-knit community and think that the transient nature of this business would have some alteration to that. So looking at the 5 criteria to a variance, the variance will not be contrary to public interest. We think it is contrary, as it will bring in people that are unfamiliar with the area. We are immediately adjacent to them, and if she'd mentioned that she may work on people for many hours at a time, and they may wander over into our neighborhood, and just some unfamiliarity that may be displeasing to some of the residents. The spirit of the ordinance would be preserved by granting of this. We believe that the ordinance prohibits uses of this type. I was looking at the zoning, and consumer services, veterinarian, print shop, sign painting, dry cleaning, these are all what I would consider like businesses, and they are all prohibitive under the ordinance. I believe that the integrity of the ordinance would be maintained by not approving the variance. Substantial justice is done. We don't believe that there's an injustice that needs to be remedied. The owner can sell the building to someone who wants to use it under the current zoning, and there are 30-plus types of uses that are available, and the applicant can seek a site somewhere else close to the 5 other tattoo shops in town where they are appropriately zoned. And certainly our consideration of the value of the surrounding properties not being diminished. We're pretty open-minded people, but there is still a stigma out there, and we have substantial real estate investment and would hate to see a decline based on people's impressions of the tattoo industry. And then lastly, literal enforcement would lead to a hardship. We don't believe that there's a hardship existing in that, like I said, the applicant can find another site and the owner can sell to someone else who can use the site appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for calling in. Anyone to speak to, for, or against?
Does she know that she can speak again?
Yes. When I do, yes. Thank you, Mr. Ram. Would you like to speak again? You're in the to, for, or against. You can speak
I'm
to
for.
it.
I would just like to quickly just address, I obviously have a lot of issues with some of the things that he just said, specifically around stigma. I I just can't fathom that someone would get out of my tattoo chair and walk around your neighborhood. That's really bizarre to me, especially as I just commented to you that I would only be seeing 1 to 2 clients at a day, and I work one-on-one with that client for the majority of the day. The late hours are not something that will ever really happen. As it is right now, I haven't stayed past 5 o'clock in over 6 months. And I just really feel that everything that was just said by Mr. Mitchell speaks to the discrimination to people who like to decorate their body the way that I do. And that's really all I have to say about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Public hearing is closed. It is back to us. Yes, Mr. Ram.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve the requested variance as presented and advertised.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
Ms. Murchison. Sorry.
So, you know, oftentimes the use requests that come before us are special exceptions, which is a case where a zone recognizes that there are a number of different uses. Some of them are fully acceptable, some of them are somewhat acceptable and need to get a special exception. The SRB in particular, as the abutter has noted, is very restrictive on any type of business uses because the concept is that you're in a residential area and that business uses by and large are probably not entirely compatible with that. That said, and you know, recognizing that the variance is a higher bar than a special exception, I really do think that there are a number of things about both this property and the proposed use on it that are kind of unique. And as a result, I do think it is meeting all of our criteria. In particular, you can kind of see where this property was actually sort of carved off of a larger property that does have a residential use on it a number of years ago, with, I think, the intent that it was specifically designed to be front-facing onto Lafayette Road, which on a whole is, you know, far more business-oriented and certainly has a few pockets of residential, but those are in the minority rather than majority. So certainly, I think, you know, we know that this, based off of the previous Board of Adjustment actions, goes back to at least probably the mid-1970s. It might be even a little bit somewhat earlier than that. And this building is, you know, uniquely sited up against Lafayette Road. Most of the residential uses in the surrounding SRB lots are much more further set back from the road. Not surprising, Lafayette Road being a highly traveled road. When the lot allowed it, people wanted their residential residences farther back. But this particular structure is designed really around a business use in mind and has had a successful business use for many years based off of the history that we have presented before us. You know, and we did read the full letter, and it was read to us again by the abutters who are in a condo that was created again with relief from this board, substantial relief from this board to create. It is sort of already bordered by an MRB parcel, which does also have a business on it. I think some of the concerns from the applicants are somewhat unfounded in the sense that, you know, really this is not a pedestrian traffic-oriented type of business. It is people who are coming here specifically to get their, you know, treatments, art performed on them, and driving away afterwards. And even if it was, really the entryways into the condo complex are primarily quite a ways over on Ocean Road. I mean, if there was any excess traffic, excess need for parking, which again, the applicant has shown that they have at the very least twice the amount of parking that is required by our ordinance, would not really go around the corner and then start driving into that condo complex. So I think a lot of those concerns are not ones that are, you know, indicating something against this meeting the criteria. So with that, I will go through our criteria. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest, and granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. We combine those together. And really, is this in keeping with the overall character of the neighborhood? Is it changing the neighborhood in some way? Again, the vast majority of the Lafayette Road properties, and including ones right across the street from here, are business related. There is another one just up the street Yes, this is a bit of a pocket of the residential, and that is why SRB is the overlying zone, but that's not to say there aren't individual parcels such as this one that have had a long-standing use as a business. The proposed, so I think it is in keeping with the long-time use of this parcel as well as the overall characteristic of the neighborhood. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, the applicant is expecting to use this in the same manner as a business for a long period of time. Yes, the nature of that business is somewhat different. Again, a tattoo art studio I don't think is one that is, maybe there's a perception somehow that it's, drunken sailors coming at all hours of the night. I don't believe that that's the nature of the tattoo art in our current times. I think it is something that is not entirely incompatible with any other previous uses that we had. And again, is really oriented toward Lafayette Road, not toward really the residences behind it. And as the abutters indicated, they feel more part of the Maple Haven community rather than really a Lafayette Road community. So I think that balancing test there, the interests of the surrounding neighbors and the city as a whole, the applicant's desire to make use of this existing facility, very modest facility, that you really, even if you want to expand upon it, the lot is not that big. You're not going to make this into, a massive tattoo emporium complex. It's really going to be relatively small. If the applicant ever wants to move and become larger, they would ultimately have to move to do so. Granting the variance would not diminish the values of surrounding properties. I know there was some mention of that. That said, again, it is really largely in character with the overall feel of the Lafayette Road area. I find it hard to believe that it is going to negatively impact any of the surrounding properties. And lastly, our hardship criteria, which is always kind of not really what hardship is. What it's really saying is what is unique about this property that distinguishes it from others in the zone that says, yeah, it should be treated somewhat differently than all the other properties. And in this case here, again, I think it's a very small parcel, sort of carved off of a larger parcel with a very clear intent to be a business oriented toward Lafayette Road. So those are, special conditions, and the use is a reasonable one. It is another business. Yes, it is. All businesses are by and large prohibited from a residential zone, but this one is no more intensive in its needs and requirements than any of the others that have existed there throughout the history of the property, and it's ultimately limited by the size of the property and the size of the structure that's in there. It's just that the intensity cannot be that great. So with that, I recommend approval.
Does the second have anything to add?
I think I'll be less humorous. The only thing that I will add is building on the hardship criteria. This lot really narrows going backwards, and I don't even see how a house could actually be fitted into this lot and build with, and actually be within any kind of building envelope. I do not think that this lot probably could reasonably be made into a residential use.
Okay, discussion?
I would only add that when we do normally consider special exceptions, we look at criteria like hazards being introduced to the area through smell, odors and effluents and materials being stored on the property and explosive hazards, fire hazards, and there's none of that here. So even if this were a special exception, I think it would fit those criteria, and I think it supports reasonable application of approving the variance.
Okay. With that, Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
And Jeff? Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Good luck.
There better be a motion to adjourn.
Mr.
Before we go to motion to adjourn, do we have a date for the January meeting?
It
The
will
third
be-
Tuesday is the 21st, and the city calendar says there's a council meeting that day.
Oh, because they're not, because of Martin.
Monday's a
Because
Yeah,
Monday's a
so
holiday.
either we get bumped to somewhere else, which is always painful, or we find an alternate day, which we have our meeting.
But we're
We
going
just
to
bumped
have
the
at
city
least
council.
2 meetings in January.
Let's just
We
put a
believe-
moratorium on variances. for
We are still waiting for our 2025 calendar to be approved by the city clerk.
Okay.
So presumably it will still occur in that week. When I know more, you'll know
Okay.
more.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. And now,
Motion to adjourn?
second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.